It is Tuesday night, East Lansing, Michigan. Come on in, gather around. I think it's Tuesday. Yeah, it's Tuesday night. Come on in, gather around. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. And we will be talking Michigan State sports for the next hour or so. We're going to get going in about 9 minutes. We've got the countdown going right now. And we hope everyone will gather around. We'll get that going here momentarily. I might not take the whole 9 minutes, but come on in. And we will get going here shortly. I'll be back momentarily. All right, we're ready to go. Let's see what we got here. It is. All right, 3, 2, 1. It is Tuesday night, East Lansing, Michigan. Come on in, gather on. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. If you don't know what SpartanMag.com is, come on in and get a taste of it. You're going to appreciate it if you're a Michigan State fan just joining in for the first time. We haven't had Spartan Mag live in several weeks. Going back around March Madness time. It was very busy that time of year with travel and so forth. Took a few weeks off, ready to get into the out of season now, get into the off season. We were there for Michigan State spring practice, taking in a number of those practices, and also, of course, the green-white scrimmage or whatever that was on April 15th. But this weekend, huge news coming out of the weekend. You know what it was. Sunday, call it bleak Sunday because things looked kind of bleak in some ways. But we'll talk more about that tonight. Of course, Peyton Thorne, Keon Coleman going into the portal. Charles Brantley went into the portal. He has since come out of the portal. You guys know about that. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight. Also, thanks to those of you that were over at the This Is Sparta podcast, watching us over there. If you've migrated over here, thanks for coming and joining us. If it's your first time, your first experience with this nonsense, we think you're going to like it. If you're a Michigan State fan, we know you're going to like it. Even though the news is a little bit strange for Michigan State fans coming out of that weekend, I think there's some good things to feel good about with the football program coming out of the spring. I'll expand on that a little bit later. Just incrementally, maybe not huge things, but incrementally. We were hoping to have Mooby tonight, Big Mooby, to get his thoughts. He is unable to join us. And then Konendijk, we're hoping that he was able to join us also, but he's come down with a bitter cold. And we hope he'll be feeling better. So we're going to go solo, take your questions, and we will take your questions over in the comments area as well. We'll go to question number 1 for the mailbag. And these mailbag questions were posted over at SpartanMag.com in the Underground Bunker message board. Is it in the Underground Bunker or at the Underground Bunker? I think I usually say at the Underground Bunker. At the Underground Bunker message board, which is a forum in the premium area of SpartanMag.com. It is the church of what's happening now with Michigan State sports. It is the daily narrative on Spartan sports. And based on what happened on Sunday, there's been a lot of discussion over there, a lot of talk, a lot of thoughts, a lot of hand-wringing, a little bit of panic. Understandable. First time we've seen Michigan State starters go into the portal like this. We'll talk a little bit about that. And we've been discussing that over at the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com. If you don't know what SpartanMag.com is, go over there, check it out, and become a subscriber. I don't know what the deal is right now. Click on it, you'll find out. We've got a lot of happy customers over there. We appreciate the people that are filing in now to join Spartan Mag Live. Thanks for coming on in. Question number 1 from Westland, Michigan, Sola. He's got a question. He says, if Peyton Thorne and Keon Coleman officially leave and commit elsewhere, what percentage would you put at the likelihood of Michigan State making a bowl game for this year? All right, so he's just talking about these guys being gone, the likelihood of Michigan State making a bowl game. Well, as you guys know, to make a bowl game, you got to go 6-6. The chances of going 6-6 without Keon Coleman, I think Michigan State can be fine without Peyton Thorne, and I like Peyton Thorne. I know a lot of Michigan State fans were critical of Peyton Thorne last season. You know, he played hurt. Everybody knows that. Not the greatest quarterback in the world, but he's solid. He's a good, solid college quarterback. We saw that the year before. He managed an offense that went 11-2, made some big plays on 3rd and 4th down that helped that 11-2 season come about. He's been a good leader from everything that I can see. And I've last year when people were talking about, you know, Peyton Thorne and, you know, being Michigan State fans, some Michigan State fans, I would say a loud minority of Michigan State fans were barking about Peyton Thorne and being upset with him. I've never really understand the kill the quarterback mentality. We've seen that the guy can play good, competent football. I don't know why you would think that he would regress unless those around him have regressed in some ways. Anyway, I've never been in the anti-Thorne camp. I don't close my mind to the possibility that Peyton Thorne or some of the backups could be better. I'm not a big. I've been a critic of the unknown is undefeated mentality. That being that we've never seen Caton Hauser play, so he must definitely be better than Peyton Thorne. Well, we've not seen him play, therefore he's undefeated, and the unknown is undefeated. Well, we've seen Caton Hauser take a couple of snaps at the end of the Akron game, I think, last year. But over at SpartanMag.com, I know a lot of other outlets were talking about Caton Hauser, you know, doing some great things this spring, and he was the guy that was really chasing Peyton Thorne to win that starting job. Hold on a second. Had to adjust that heater a little bit. Anyway, a lot of people ripping on or thinking that Caton Hauser was the guy that was really pushing Peyton Thorne. Caton Hauser's got a lot of ability, a lot of talent. He's got a lot to learn, and we had been reporting at SpartanMag.com since about the first week of spring practice that Noah Kim was the player that was really pushing Peyton Thorne. And as you saw in the spring scrimmage, it certainly looked that way that day. And in light of events this weekend and other times, I mean, Noah Kim is the one that's really pushing for that job, not Caton Hauser. Now, a lot of people reported that or have talked about that. Michigan State fans have talked about it, on the Twitterverse and so forth, because that's what they want to believe. You want to believe that the quarterback, who's the youngest of the whole group, that you've seen the least, you want to believe that he is Prince Charming and he is great. That's nothing against Caden Hauser. Give him some time, give him some space to develop, and don't expect him to be Johnny Unitas or John Elway right away. Right now, Noah Kim is the guy that's a little bit older and doing a good job. Anyway, everybody knows I've made that point that Peyton Thorne, I've not been anti-Peyton Thorne. I'm not a coach. I'm not a quarterback killer in that regard. That being said, I do think, and I've heard this, that Noah Kim has really been closing the gap there. And I think that they can win with Noah Kim. I think they can win with Peyton Thorne. So either one of them, provided that starter stay healthy, if it becomes Noah Kim and Peyton Thorne's gone, I don't think that, I suspect that doesn't change the winning potential of Michigan State next year. Losing Keon Coleman would hurt more, I think. In all due respect to all those players, I respect them as young men and young athletes all the same. Long story short, you're asking me what the percentage is going to a bowl game. I'd say 60% chance of going 6-6. Question number 2, Spartan Avenue is his name, from Rochester Hills, Michigan. He says, who is the biggest benefactor in the wide receiver room with Coleman's departure? Well, first of all, it's not a departure, and we wrote that at SpartanMag.com on Sunday night, that it's a potential departure. A lot of other people were saying that he is gone. What are we going to do? He's not gone yet. And we wrote from that angle at SpartanMag.com on Sunday night the potential departure of Keon Coleman and what that would mean. So the benefactors, well, I mean, Trey Mosley is a senior. He's a possession receiver, and I think he is going to have a pretty good season. I don't think he is, he's not a take the top off the defense deep threat, but he's got strong hands and he's a good, solid, mature football player. He'll get more action this year, more targets, because Jaden Reed's gone, and if Keon's gone, Mosley gets more as a possession guy, an occasional downfield threat. Montori Foster's one to keep an eye on. He's 6'2", about 185. Last year he was injured much of the season. He looked like a very promising wide receiver earlier in his career. Northeast Ohio kid coming in from Cleveland, was injured last year, so he didn't take that next step of development last year, but he had a good spring, and he's a good, solid, bona fide Big Ten wide receiver, a Michigan State-style receiver. Michigan State's had great receivers over the years. He's a good one. How good can he be? We're going to find out. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't put a ceiling. I don't know what the ceiling is. I think he's got a pretty high ceiling, probably higher than Trey Mosley, although Mosley's a better, more established, reliable wide receiver right now. Other ones that are coming along, Terrell Henry, sophomore from Roseville, getting a lot of compliments this spring. None of these guys are ready to be Keon Coleman, of course. Antonio Gates, a guy with a lot of talent. Last year redshirted, a guy that really flashed some excellent ability in high school, a guy that I thought was kind of underrated, but underrated even though with that big name. When he flashed talent in high school, it was high-level stuff. But can he, how driven is he? How committed is he? How fired up is he? How much does he love football? He's got ability. If he totally taps in, he has a high ceiling of potential as well. Christian Fitzpatrick's out there at 6'4", 218, redshirt junior, transfer from Louisville, Michigander, big guy, big target. With Keon Coleman gone, if he leaves, then Christian Fitzpatrick becomes the big receiver of the group. But he doesn't elevate like Keon Coleman. He's not the crazy athlete that Coleman is. Fitzpatrick might get a little more time, but none of those guys are Keon Coleman. So the run game's got to get better. The defense has to get better. But you asked who are the biggest benefactors. I think Montori Foster would end up being the guy who would get more targets if Keon Coleman moves on. Now, all right, let's get to it about in terms of I've mentioned this on some other shows about what my thoughts were about what happened on Sunday and what's going to happen next. When it first happened, I was like, oh crap, big news. First of all, I had work to do because I heard about it like right at noon on Sunday when the news broke. The news broke. I was, I guess maybe 12:30 or so. I was headed out the door. I was like in the garage leaving to go over to McLean Stadium to watch Michigan State baseball. They're playing Northwestern. They'd won the first two. Northwestern is terrible. Michigan State had a good chance to sweep. I want to go over there and talk to Jake Boss a little bit, see what Michigan State looked like. I've been to a few games this year. They've been winning pretty solidly, and they're on the cusp of maybe being, RPI NCAA tournament at large territory. Depends on how they do here down the stretch. Some tough series coming up against Iowa and some others. So I want to go over there and check that out. And boom, I had to stop at my tracks. Peyton Thorne in the portal. So for the next 9 hours, you know how the news broke on Sunday. Then Keon Coleman might be going, might not, might be in the portal, might not. Then he was, and then Brantley. So for 9 hours, I was writing 3 or 4 articles that appeared over at SpartanMag.com, and was also over at the Underground Bunker message board, conversing with Michigan State fans who are subscribers to SpartanMag.com, just discussing everything, all the news that was coming in. So that was my Sunday from noon until 9. I was hoping to go watch some baseball. Did not happen. Just blew a tire on my headphones. So the initial news. Yeah, stunning. Everybody was stunned. I think a lot of people were stunned and staggered for the rest of the day and into Monday. I was stunned for about a second and then immediately knew what that meant. Not surprised. Okay, that means that Peyton Thorne, this is my read on it, Peyton Thorne sees things the way I was beginning to see things and being led to believe how things were going at the quarterback position, and that is that his job security was not great. He could lose that starting quarterback job. I heard from some good sources that the first 2 scrimmages of the spring, Noah Kim was better than Peyton Thorne. And I say that as someone who has great respect for Peyton Thorne and feels that he should be getting more respect than he got last year in general in the college football world. So again, I'm going to keep saying that for people that are just coming to the show and so forth. I've always been a guy that's been impressed with Peyton Thorne. I don't want to say I'm pro Peyton Thorne. I don't want to say I've got like a bias or an agenda or anything. I'm just saying I've not been one that's gotten in line and been the first to yell, with pitchforks and torches about Peyton Thorne. I think he's been solid. That being said, so if I'm saying that I think Noah Kim I'd been hearing that he was gaining and that he might even be pulling ahead, I'm saying that with full respect to Peyton Thorne. Noah Kim, good arm talent. Mel Tucker has been telling us for a long time he had the best arm talent of anyone in the quarterback room. And you do see him make some throws that Peyton Thorne aren't as comfortable for Peyton Thorne. And in that spring scrimmage that we all were able to see live on April 15th, Peyton Thorne, Noah Kim pushed the ball down the field more aggressively. Now, I know it's just a scrimmage, and I'd have to chart it to see exactly which defenses they were going against, but I think they had similar numbers of reps against the first-string defense. But our unofficial stats, I had Noah Kim at 9 out of 17 for 123 yards, so just barely above 55%. However, 6 of Noah Kim's 9 completions were for 10 yards or more. 6 of his 9 completions. Peyton Thorne, 7 out of 9. Only 2 of his completions were for 10 yards or more. He did a lot of check down. Now, was that just a scrimmage for the public, or was that a scrimmage that was going to be evaluated and graded and by the coaches and go into consideration to eventually choose a starting quarterback? Yes, it was graded. Of course it was. Every time they take the field 15 times in the spring, everything is evaluated, everything is graded, everything goes toward determining who's going to be the starting quarterback. That being said, I mean, Noah Kim was charging, and the things that I heard about the first 2 scrimmages I thought showed themselves a little bit there. Noah Kim with his decision-making, we don't know a lot about that. Peyton Thorne's been out there with the bullets flying, with real football going on, and with all the intensity and 4 million people watching on TV. He's played in those games, and he's done well in clutch situations, I think. We don't know that about Noah Kim. With Noah Kim, there's talent. So that's what coaches are trying to weigh. Noah Kim is rising as a guy with a lot of ability, but this other guy is more seasoned and proven. So I was just on the This is Sparta podcast, and I was talking about that. If you are Mel Tucker, that's a difficult decision, difficult waters to navigate, because Tucker wants to keep both of them. He wants both quarterbacks to stay. So if you want both quarterbacks to stay, you probably don't come out and say who the leader is right at the end of spring practice, because the other one's going to leave. I've heard that they were surprised that Peyton Thorne entered the portal. I heard Chris Solari talking about that on radio here locally, and he made some really good points that if you go back and listen to Peyton Thorne and the things he said after the spring game, there were some things that were kind of clues that he was kind of not worrying about, what the head coach thought about things, like talking about his injury. He says, I could get in trouble for this, but he's just he talked about his injury a little bit. And he's kind of indicated that maybe he wasn't as worried about authority as much. So that was maybe a hint that he was going to check out the portal. Now, why would he do that? We've already established maybe because he's on the cusp of losing his job or concerned about it. I've heard that some players came out of spring, heard this from good sources, some players came out of the spring saying and thinking Noah Kim's the guy. That's just what I've heard. Again, I'm neutral. I'm not trying to push any agendas. That's what I've heard. So if you're Thorne, do you recognize that? Maybe not. Thorne's a great competitor. He's an athlete. All great athletes, not that I'm one, but great athletes think that they're the guy. They think that they're going to win the job. They think that they're fine. They are secure with it. So I would say he's more likely to think, that's fine, I can still win the job if I come back. I'm sure he would think that. However, that's where communication from the coach is so important, the head coach. Did Peyton Thorne feel a little bit disrespected, a little bit, unappreciated, playing hurt last year, and a terrible defense with all their injuries, and not having Kenneth Walker, Jaden Reed being injured, and then playing hurt for a lot of the year? Yeah, his numbers were down. Yes, the win total was down. The crowd's booing. On social media, fans are coming after him. Did he see that on social media? I think so. I mean, they say kids these days, not me, I have no trouble with social media, not paying attention to it. I'm not a quarterback. I'm not out there part of a team that's losing games. Was he shocked? I mean, because he was, they went 11-2, and he was a guy that was revered. He was one of the heroes of the 11-2 season, and then it tanks, and there's repercussions from that, and that's big boy football these days, and he got a taste of it, unfortunately. So the coaches, does he feel disrespected and a little bit of lack of appreciation there? Does he have a little sour taste in his mouth about the fan reaction? And then he's not sure if he's going to keep his job. All those things come into it, and then other programs are tampering and saying, hey, get in the portal, we're interested. Our name, image, and likeness situation down here at Billy Bob U, you'll get at least $300,000 here. Put all those things together, it's enough to make someone go into the portal. Excuse me. Presumably. I've not spoken with any of these guys. I've not reached out to them just out of privacy. I don't think any reporters have, because when players go into the portal, the last thing they're going to do is talk to the press and do interviews. So we're just kind of out here on the outside talking about them as football players, public figures, and trying to guess where they're standing on all these things. Okay, so if anyone out there is criticizing Coleman or Thorne for doing this, I can't agree with you. I mean, they've got every right to do this and find out what they're worth. And they did it for different reasons, and I knew right away what those would be. Keon Coleman, it's all about his value and the money that he can generate. He's a big-time receiver, and there's some big-time programs, LSU in his home state of Louisiana, and Tennessee, who's got a lot of NIL money to throw around. Why wouldn't you go in there and listen? So no criticism of those two gentlemen at all. As far as Tucker, he's trying to keep both quarterbacks together. It's kind of a difficult situation to do. Those two guys go in the portal. That's been the other reaction. Is it a dumpster fire? Are things out of control? No, I think that's hyperbole. That's just, I disagree with that notion. I think that Michigan State has some crows have come home to roost in some ways, and it's college football in general. There's programs all over the country that are losing players to the portal. Michigan State is not a team that can handle losing a talent like Keon Coleman and just withstand that and next man up. The next man up is going to be a big drop off. That's where all the consternation is. That's where some of the panic is. And I understand that too. And that's why Michigan State is trying to keep him. I wrote on Sunday night that Michigan State, the people inside believe that neither Thorne nor Coleman want to leave, and Michigan State wants to keep both of them. And they're working hard with Coleman. It's been reported that I think Audrey Dahlgren had the story at Channel 6, WLNS in Lansing, reported that Mel Tucker had a sit-down with Keon Coleman. It was either today or Monday. Doesn't surprise me based on some things I heard on Sunday. Michigan State was going to try to do that, and lines of communication were good with Coleman and positive. And, the two sides get along, and Mel Tucker gets that. And Mel Tucker wants to see what Michigan State is able to mobilize in terms of name, image, and likeness, which is not his job. So, and then the question becomes, I've mentioned this on the Huge Show out of Grand Rapids today. If you're a Michigan State fan, the going rate for some of these big-time players at some of these programs now is high six figures. We hear that it even creeps into seven figures, over $1 million for some players. If you're a Michigan State fan, yeah, everybody wants to keep Keon Coleman. He goes in the portal. Everybody's all crazy, like, what the hell's going on? The program's all blowing up. And then, do you want to keep Keon Coleman? Yes, we want to keep Keon Coleman. Okay, what if it costs $1 million? Are you okay with that? I think some people would be. I'm not going to say anything's right or wrong about that. Those are decisions that programs have to make based on how much money they have available. Does Michigan State have that kind of money available? They've got donors that are that strong. Is everything organized well enough to divvy things out like that when the time comes? So all these things, all these crows are coming home to roost on Michigan State now. The changing nature of NCAA college football, retention of a roster, and whether Michigan State has the muscle to keep a player when they get someone like Keon Coleman. Excuse me, it's been a long day of talking. So now the chances of keeping either one of them, that's going to come up in one of these questions here pretty soon, and we will talk about that in a moment. But first, let me get over here. Let me see if I can find go over here to the comments area, and we will be taking some questions over there. Yeah, give us a thumbs up, give us a like here at this channel. We would appreciate that. Also, subscribe to the channel, and we would love it if you would consider going over to SpartanMag.com and becoming a subscriber over there. If you're just joining the show, my name is Jim Comparoni, publisher of SpartanMag.com. Been publisher of SpartanMag.com since basically the beginning of the internet, and we appreciate those of you that have been subscribers and supporters of SpartanMag.com all along. We've got a few posts over here. We've got a few comments. John Gendich says, is Keon staying? Brian V says, hello all. Adam Ficus says, thumbs up for Comp, boys. Aaron May says, hi, Comp. And Dingus McGee says, howdy. So that's the starting five for tonight. John Gendich. I don't remember John Gendich. Is he new from the portal? I don't remember John Gendich. He's a first-timer. So John Gendich, we're going to give him the ball. He's running the point. Brian V, he's on the wing. Adam Ficus is at the 3. Aaron Mays down low in the middle. And Dingus McGee, he's the stretch 4 tonight. That's our starting 5. MSU Hunter Spartan checking in from Wisconsin. Will Stallworth says, all right, Comp, I've been waiting to hear from you to make sense of all this mess. Go green. Making sense of it. Hopefully, some of these opening comments here today makes some sense of it. Some of it, it's different for Keon. It's different for Peyton Thorne. It was different for Brantley before he pulled out. Different reasons that they went in. I understand all of it. The money with Keon Coleman, big time. The chance to go back closer to home in Louisiana, big time. Peyton Thorne, I mean, he was here when, he took Rocky Lombardi's job. Rocky began the season in 2020. Peyton Thorne took over by the end of the season. Peyton Thorne was here. He saw what happened with Lewerke. When Lewerke played hurt and the student section was chanting Rocky, 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 they wanted Rocky in there. The unknown was undefeated, or the slightly known was undefeated. Rocky Lombardi had a big day, 300 yards or close to it, against Purdue, and they upset Purdue a week or two after Purdue had upset Ohio State. Lewerke had been injured. Lombardi, a very good kid, had a good game against Purdue. Purdue played the softest zone coverage that Michigan State had seen in a couple of years. Rocky Lombardi just picked daisies along the sideline, put up big numbers, won the game, and everybody thought he was great. And they chanted his name. A lot of them quit on Brian Lewerke. Peyton Thorne was here. He saw that. Peyton Thorne gained on Rocky Lombardi, overtook him. Anthony Russo leaves Temple, comes to Michigan State expecting to start. Peyton Thorne surprises him and beats him. He has seen what it's like to be an uncomfortable second-string quarterback. So, is there a part of him that was concerned that would happen to him? You got to think possibly. So those guys going to the portal, just the way college football is these days. And Michigan State's got to survive it and move on and see what happens. And I think Noah Kim's got a chance to play real well. We'll see what happens with Peyton Thorne. Do they need Keon Coleman? Yes. Are they trying to keep him? Yes. What kind of money is being talked about? I do not know. I asked somebody, can Michigan State mobilize the money to keep him? And somebody with a lot of knowledge of the situation told me that's what we're going to find out. He didn't know yet. Aaron Mays says, do you think Thorne felt privileged and thought he should not have had to fight for the quarterback position? It's a good way to put it. Did he feel privileged? He wouldn't himself think that he felt privileged. He himself, if I'm just guessing, he himself probably thought maybe he deserved a stronger benefit of the doubt, maybe. Even if Noah Kim is more talented, does he think that It should have been Peyton Thorne's been here for 2 years. He quarterbacked us 11-2 2 years ago. He is our starter. Did he expect the coaches to say that? Maybe so. I've heard it said that he was surprised or he didn't know it was going to be a competition until Mel Tucker made that statement at the first press conference. I don't think it was Thorne that said that. I think there's just rumors about that. I don't know. I heard that it was like right after the season ended, like in December. They had a meeting and the quarterbacks were told this is a competition. And we wrote about that at SpartanMag.com, that they were told it was a competition. And that means that Peyton Thorne, you could lose your job. Maybe he thought that was just coach speak and lip service. It was my understanding that they were told, no, this is going to be a competition. And if Peyton Thorne's on the field every day with Noah Kim, he knew that Noah Kim was a viable competitor. So should he have felt privileged? That gets back to, that's some deep-seated philosophical stuff if you're running a football program. You've got a returning starter. Do you go to get out front and say, this is my starter? Harbaugh didn't do that with McNamara last year. They had the competition. Everybody knows about that. J.J. McCarthy won. They had a great season. So, tough situations. Old Tuck is here. The bell cow, he's here. Noah Sprunger's here. Appreciate Noah Sprunger. Intern extraordinaire, doing a great job at SpartanMag.com. Appreciate all the work Noah Sprunger does. Rob South says, okay, Jim, I'm here. Just left. This is Sparta. Thanks for joining us over here, Jim South. Brian V says, it's a beautiful day for Spartan Mag Live. Thank you, Brian, for your enthusiasm. We're going to go tonight for maybe an hour, maybe a little bit longer, as long as my voice holds up. Whatever happens last, whatever happens first. It's going to be tough. Old Tuck from Ludington says, he's from Ludington for any of my critics on the bunker. Yeah, Old Tuck has been, I've heard about it, but I've not seen it. With all the work that went on this weekend, I spent most of my time writing, and I'll post stuff on the bunker, but I don't get a chance to read a lot of the posts when there's a lot of news flying. But I heard Old Tuck was ruffling some feathers over there. So Old Tuck, you watch yourself, or you'll end up like Joltin' Joe. I don't know, I'm joking. Joltin' Joe's in the penalty box. Old Tuck, I've never had a problem with Old Tuck, but some of our moderators are like, man, your boy Old Tuck is causing problems. I'm like, dude, he's going to be all right. I don't know. But Old Tuck, cognizant of the fact that he's got some critics over at the Underground Bunker message board. I'm not really sure what was going on, to be honest. Spartion 6686 says, Keon's mom was in the chat over at This Is Sparta. Got to keep positive and keep supporting our guys all over. No more bashing on Twitter. Players and parents are watching. Well, that's a great point. I was on the This Is Sparta podcast with Otis Wiley, J.O. Colcrick, and Jason Strayhorn. Thank you to those gentlemen for inviting me on their show. That was a lot of fun. I was involved in the discussion, but I did not see the chat area. I was not watching it, but interesting that Keon's mom was over there. With that being said, I'm glad that I was complimentary of him, and everything I said of Keon was how I truly feel. I don't sugarcoat any of that stuff. Good kid. And good for him for as hard as he's worked to be in this position to do this. So, Harriet Dean says hello. Good to have Harriet here. Sean Little says hello, Jim. Mr. Bowman says great job on This Is Sparta. Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Marla Milano said, what up, Jim? Nick Harrington says, yo, Comp, checking in from Florida. This should be a good one. James Wyndham Jr. says, do you think the secondary will be significantly better this year? Well, it needs to be, that's for sure. Jim Salgado is an interesting hire at the cornerback position. I thought that was a good move by Mel Tucker. You know, Mel Tucker tried to coach corners last year, and I think he found that it was difficult. I don't think that it was a reason the defense was bad, but he thinks that he's better off turning it over to someone else, and Tucker overseeing being the head coach. Tucker spent a year with B.T. Jordan as the pass rush coach, and that was kind of an outside-the-box hire, and the pass rush certainly looked really good the first 3 weeks of September. Then it cooled off dramatically, but a lot of players felt that they got a lot from B.T. Jordan, and his presence as a recruiter was expected to really appeal to a lot of players. And it did with some. It helped get by Joe, but it helped get to Mise Adeleye, and then B.T. Jordan left. But Jordan was not one that was out recruiting away from home a whole lot, much at all. He was more of a destination type of guy. Come here, play for us, this guy will coach you. But I'm not sure B.T. Jordan was ever completely comfortable with the whole college coaching landscape. Now he's in the NFL, and that's probably where he will stay. So Michigan State tried that. It was an outside-the-box attempt to do some things with the pass rush. Tried it. Look, it kind of worked. Would it have worked more the longer that went on? Hard to say, but that part's gone. Hire a new defensive line coach. Hire a corner coach so that Tucker can go back to being full-time head coach. I think those things are good things. I hear a lot of good things about Salgado. I hear those from people that have coached with him and played for him. I heard that Jarrell Worthy's got, former Michigan State player, has a high opinion of him. I've not talked to Jarrell, but that's what I hear. So, and some people that have seen him coach a little bit are impressed. I've not had a chance to really watch him closely in practice yet. When he was first hired, I have to say, well, his resume is just kind of okay. I wasn't that greatly impressed with the resume. You have to be impressed with NFL if someone coaches in the NFL to an extent, I guess. But he hadn't coached in the college ranks for a while, so I wasn't really sure about that. But I've heard a lot of good things from people that I respect about him, both internally but more importantly externally about him. So I think he's got a chance to really help the cornerback situation and look at things differently. I hear that he's been impressed with Marquis Lowry. And that's a guy that was kind of lost last year, Marquis Lowry. Transfer from Louisville, I think it was, right? From North Carolina, from Charlotte. Lowry established himself as a pretty hard hitter in 2021 as a bit-time role player, and then last year was injured a little bit and just disappeared. It's my understanding that he had a good spring. Salgado comes in. They've got a blank slate with everybody. Long story short, I think corners got a chance to improve. Last year I have to say I was disappointed with a lot of things that happened at the cornerback position. Ronald Williams was kind of okay in 2021, transferring in from Alabama, and then last year just disappears. I struggle with that a little bit, how some players just disappear. And when it happens over and over with a lot of players, I'm not sure it's the player's fault. I just wonder philosophically what's going on there. Amir Speed comes in from Georgia. He just got drafted this weekend, but he was a disappointment last year. Good kid. I wish him well. Seems to work hard. I've got respect for that. On the field, 6'3", 4.3 speed, great frame. That's why he got drafted. But on the football field, kind of allergic to contact a little bit. Agility was not great. He struggled, and he was injured for a couple weeks late in the season, but he lost his job for a week. Ronald Williams got to start. So Amir Speed coming in from Georgia, that didn't work out so great. That was only part of the problems on defense. Being on the same page was a problem. I've said it before, 27 different starters for Michigan State on defense last year. 27 different starters. You cannot be a good defense. Even if you're Georgia, if they had to start 27 different guys, they would probably struggle also. And they've had the greatest collection of defensive talent in the 85 scholarship era probably that any teams have had. Well, I think the last 3 years, Georgia's had a player drafted at all 11 positions or something like that. Okay, not going to compare Michigan State to Georgia. Georgia's in a different stratosphere, and Alabama is also. But 27 different starters on defense due to injury. It's hard to have a good defense when that's going on. That being said, there were some same-pageness problems. There was, Michigan State battled with Penn State there in the last game of the season, and the play that really broke the camel's back, you might remember when Xavier Henderson was in the end zone and they scored a touchdown and he threw a temper tantrum. We didn't see Xavier Henderson respond or react that way at any time in his career. But right there, his last game as a Spartan, he was mad at the third-string walk-on safety who blew a cover 3 coverage. It was Khalil Majid out there doing his best. But blitz cover 3, he didn't get over there. I'm trying to think exactly what it was. I think he vacated the middle and kind of played a 4 deep and didn't take the middle. And I think Xavier was up a level higher. I'm trying to remember exactly what happened. The bottom line is they ran. I don't want to say it's a big exotic. I think it might have been a corner blitz into a cover 3, which is not base, but it's not an exotic, but it's a signal came in and somebody missed it, and the guy that missed it's a third-string walk-on. And there's some people who believe that what you need to do on defense is make sure everybody's knows what they're doing, so then you can play fast. That was kind of Mike Tressel's philosophy. Make sure everybody knows what they're doing so you can play fast. Now, they got gutted by some teams, including Western Michigan, a lot of passing offense, for maybe being a little too vanilla on defense, and they tried to massage that and tweak that as they went along. Talking about the Tressel and Narduzzi days. Hazelton, I mean, he's a guy that's going to change the pictures a lot. He's going to go with exotics. Can you do that a lot if you're fooling your own guys too much? If you're playing 27 different starters, if you have Khalil Majid out there? These are questions that have to be discussed in the war room, I would think. All right, so bottom line, secondary. I think they're going to be better at corner. I think Salgado's going to help there with player development. You would have to hope the players don't just disappear like we've seen, and you have to hope that the same pageness improves if they don't have to have all the injuries and 27 different starters. I hear that Salgado's come in. We had a question over here in the mailbag asking about Salgado. I'll go to that right now. It was question number 11 from Nolan Schroeder out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. He says, we've heard in other thread sites that Salgado has pushed through some changes in scheme and style in the secondary, something along the lines of not having DBs play 6 to 10 yards back on receivers as much. I'm calling bull crap on that. I mean, there's, I don't know. People that don't watch football, people that, anytime there's a coaching change, this is what you get in college football. A new coach comes in and says, when they change a scheme, well, last year we were read and react. Now we're going to have more of an attacking style defense. How many times have you read that in the last 25 years if you're old enough? Thousands of times. When have you ever heard a coach come in and say, well, last year we were more of an attack defense. This year we're going to be more read and react. Nobody ever says that because the public wouldn't digest that very well. So not going to be 6 and 7 yards off. Salgado's got some ideas coming in, no question about it, and there will be some changes in how some things are done because that's the way it is with all position coaches. He'll talk with Hazelton, and they'll arrive at some solutions, and I think that's healthy. I think that they do need some new brain work coming in, and some new eyes looking at it, but not as much 6 to 10 yards back on receivers as much. No, they're going to do what everybody else in the country does. They're going to play some man. They're going to play some cover 2, some cover 3, some quarter, some cover 6, some man-to-man and press. Some might be off man-to-man. Everybody runs the same damn coverages pretty much. So don't expect a cornerbacks coach to come in and say, you know what, we're not going to be 10 yards off as much as we used to be. Everybody runs pretty much the same coverages, and they tighten them up a little bit more based on the athleticism and agility and ability to cover over the top and allow to play with more aggressiveness. So stuff about a new coach is going to change things. There'll be some changes, but anyway, he says, have you heard anything about this? Has he made some scheme changes? They're going to talk about some things. They're going to discuss things, like I said, but in terms of like changing how far off they are with now, I mean, they'll play some press man-to-man, off man-to-man. I mean, this is what I'm getting at. You might look at it and say, why is that corner 10 yards off? Why is he doing that? Probably because it's cover 3. And he might show up and press and turn and bail at the snap. Or they might show it earlier and disguise it into something. But, I mean, Seattle used to do that a lot back in the Legion of Boom days, right? So there's no, I don't know, I got a little excited there. I'm getting ready for football. I think I've kind of, I think I lost my comments area here a little bit. There it is. So that was the question about Salgado. Let's go back over here to the comments area. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this right here for anyone that wants to. I might open the phone line. Should we open the phone lines? Where's it at? If I could find it. That's not the one. I'll put it right here is what I'll do. I'll do it right here. Call SpartanMag live if you want to. If we don't get any calls, that's fine. But if people want to call in and yell at me, that's fine also. Let's see if I can do that. There, we'll put that right there. We do not have a producer, if you haven't noticed this. And I missed rehearsal, so it's It's a little bit of a problem. Let me go back to the mailbag for one more question, then we'll get back to the comments. Normally we have big movie Ron Armstrong joining us, but he's got some very good, happy things going on at home, and he's over there and not available tonight, which we respect for sure. We love it when he's here. Maybe next time he'll be in here. Let's see. Question number 3. From WX Spartan from Wixom, Michigan. He says, I think he's from Wixom. Is this fan base being fair to Mel Tucker in your mind? Not saying he's perfect or doesn't deserve more criticism or some criticism for things on the field. But when it comes to the shape of the roster was in when he got the job, recruiting and other programs, poaching players, etc. Is the fan base fair to Mel Tucker? Good question, fair question. I have to say that I'm not really sure what the fans' reaction is to Mel Tucker. I've seen a little bit on the Underground Bunker message board, but things that are being said on Twitter, I don't read any of that. My Twitter news feed, I get links to news items, and I get, comments and opinions from people that I follow. But if they post something, I rarely go in and read the replies. So if people are ripping on Mel Tucker on Twitter, I'm not aware of it, so I don't know how to answer that necessarily. I assume they are. I assume that there's some nervousness about what happened on Sunday because it's unprecedented, because this era of college football is unprecedented. It's the first time that Michigan State has really run into something like this.
Call from
Cali Spartan.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
All right, let's go to Detroit, Michigan, talk to a longtime subscriber and frequent contributor, Callie Spartan. Callie Spartan, how's the young one doing? How old's the young one now? 3 months? 3 months?
My oldest boy is 4 years, and the youngest one is 3 months. Yeah, 3-4 months.
You getting any sleep?
No, he's in my lap right now, looking at me. We were up watching you on the This is Sparta podcast.
Cool.
That was a good. It was a good show, Comp. It's glad to see you back on YouTube doing the show again. It's been a minute.
It's been a while. We had a good run going there, and during the winter, when it became tournament time, I just never had any time because the brackets come out on Sunday. That's a tough work day, and then I'm up all night watching whoever it was Michigan State played in the first round before they played Marquette. I don't even remember, trying to put together some film on that and some film review. And then, you're on the road traveling to Columbus on Wednesday, and those days go by quickly. And then you're getting ready for the Sweet 16, and I didn't have time to do a SpartanMag Live. Thought about maybe doing it from the hotel or something, but just didn't do it. Then it was spring practice. Then I had to travel out of state for a funeral. My aunt died, passed away, 83 years old, sweetheart of a lady, had a great life. So I was gone for 3 or 4 days on that one. Next thing you know, it's the spring game, and now it's May 2nd, and I went a few weeks without SpartanMag Live. I'm glad you missed us, Callie Spartan. I'm glad you missed us. It's good to be missed.
Yeah, shoot, the whole board. The last time you were on, I think we were talking about, and rightfully so, you were calling out people who were like, Michigan State's done. Like, this is during the tournament. Like, right before, and we were just like, we're like, well, who are these cowards who say they're Spartan fans and, they doubt his own stuff like that. And lo and behold, they made it to the next round, the next weekend, and people were, once again, just like how they walked back some comments when Chuck Brantley came back today, they were walking back comments about Izzo and the program. But, it's normally the same people who complain, so I'm not surprised at this point.
Did I lose my temper about that regarding basketball in early March a little bit? Did I lose my temper once or twice?
Like I said, rightfully so, man. People need to be called out. It's getting ridiculous that we got so many. I don't want to get in trouble, but we got a lot of mental midgets still in the fan base. People out here who claim the good times, but they see one bump in the road. It's Jesus, man. It's terrible. It's terrible sometimes. When certain things happen on the board.
Have some people have some security about yourselves. Don't be insecure. It's going to be all right. Keon Coleman's a good player. Mel Tucker and his staff did a good job evaluating him and recruiting him out of Louisiana as a 3-star, got him on campus, developed him, turned into a superstar player. This is college football today. When you develop somebody, especially someone who's from 1,000 miles away, there's going to be some bigger sharks coming after him. Now does Michigan State have the wherewithal to keep a player like that? This is a new chapter. We're all going to find out. Michigan State's working on it. We'll see. And if they don't keep him, and this is a young man who would like to stay, if they don't keep him, that's going to be a sign that those in the support areas need to do more to get the collectives stronger.
Well, what I'm confused at, and to pivot from Keon for a second, is I'm pretty sure you read the board comp. You read it like pretty frequently, right?
I'm on there, and I post a lot, but I'm not able to, since Sunday, things have been so busy, I've not had a chance to really sink in and read all the posts. There's a lot of posts on there at the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com, so I didn't get a chance to read all of them. But
you see a good portion of them throughout the year, and remember, during the season, people were making a board after thread about, well, if the Orange looking a little bad out there, maybe we should give someone else a turn. And, I was seeing that for weeks and months. But the moment he leaves the transfer portal, people, for some reason, like, why would he leave? Why? I didn't want him to leave. I'm like, these are the same people saying they want someone else to play. I'm like, you can't have it both ways. And in fact, maybe common sense tells you, maybe he actually lost his job, and maybe we have a better quarterback coming in. It's like it's never good enough. Like it's like it just seems like this dark cloud over the program from the fans. They're like just sitting there thinking like, well, if things aren't perfect, then we're obviously doing something. Everything's going to hell in a handbasket. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like stuff's going to happen, but everything can't be the end of the world. It can't be. Yeah, it seems like every other day is the end of the world in our fan base. I just don't understand it.
Do you think all fan bases are like that?
I wouldn't be surprised, but I mean, come on now. We boast toughness in the Big Ten. We boast toughness being a Spartan dog, and I don't see a lot of toughness on the board in the fan base. Like if we're alums of the very self-same program and self-same university that breeds this toughness, I'm not seeing a lot of it in the alumni right now.
Well, I hope the players are more resilient than the fans.
Well, absolutely. I mean,
not all the fans, just the wussy ones, right? And I'm just kidding out there. We're just having fun tonight. But you know what? They're fanatics, and that's part of it. It's all silly. The ticket prices are silly. The TV contracts are silly. It's all silly. So, they can be silly too, I guess.
Well, I mean, I guess the positive is the players aren't going off and putting fuel on the fire. They're like, hey man, we're still working, we're still doing this. That's a good sign. It seems like the camaraderie outside looking in is a little bit better now than it was maybe a year or so ago, at least from the sense of you see a lot of guys they're using more we verbiage, like we got to get this together, we're going to be back. It feels like there's a little more closeness on the team this year. So that's a good sign. I mean, I like that. What's the defensive end who came from Texas A&M? He tweeted out that it don't matter, or to paraphrase, it doesn't matter. We're gonna if we have to win games using the defense or putting the defense or whatever, then we'll do that. I'm like, that's right. I like that. I like seeing gumption from the defensive side again.
That's an interesting thing. Jacoby Windman came in as a transfer from UNLV. And he impressed his teammates right away and became a leader right away. Tumisi Adeleye coming in from A&M. It's interesting that you see it that way on social media. I don't doubt that that's happening, but with Michigan State and the number of transfers they have on the roster, if you go on Michigan State's roster right now, the number of players that have been at Michigan State for 3 years, it's a low number. I mean, it's a transient roster, and they've gone for bigger bodies and so forth. They've gone for it. Now, can they? What's that camaraderie piece going to look like? It's an important factor. Peyton Thorne was regarded as a leader. Was he really a leader? I assume so. I don't have any reason to think that he wasn't. But you take him out of there, can Noah Kim then become a leader? I mean, these are things changing all the times, and changing all the time.
Can you speak more on?
It's hard to evaluate some of these things, but they are important factors.
Can you speak on the when you said Payne Thorne? Sure, if you think he was leader, but I think you said a while back though. Maybe it was in one of the articles you wrote that Hauser was he tried to come in and be a leader, but he couldn't necessarily do that because of Thorne being a captain or whatever?
No,
like
that wasn't me that wrote that. I've never wrote that or thought that. But go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, but maybe I'm confused, but I know someone said that, like maybe it was a different podcast or something. But they were talking about essentially that some of the younger QBs, like use Hauser as one of them, was like there's guys who wanted to step up and be bigger leaders, but because of the I don't know, bureaucracy or whatever, they was like, well, people still had to defer to Thorne because he was the captain, he was the quarterback, whatever. But now it seems like what do you think about that? Like now the changing of the guard, right? Like whoever the QB is, like do you think the team, like is the team really galvanized behind him like it looks like on social media, or what sense do you get right now?
It's hard to get a read on it. I mean, leadership is important to the quarterback position. I never thought that Peyton Thorne was lacking in that area. We all know that, Connor Cook won a lot of football games at Michigan State and had a really great run and was injured late in that 2015 season. Otherwise, they might have won even more. It's hard to say, but no one ever really thought he was a great leader. Maybe he was an abrasive type of guy. But I tell you what, Kurt Gibson was kind of abrasive at Michigan State too, and I don't think Kurt Gibson was ever a captain at Michigan State. He went to major leagues and became one of the best leaders the Dodgers have had in the last few decades. So sometimes it takes different personalities to do things. I don't know. I don't know where Peyton Thorne falls on that line, and if he moves on, do they have other people that are waiting to become leaders? I assume they probably do. And when some people are around, it's harder for other leaders to really blossom. I remember way back at the beginning of the Tom Izzo era, someone like Antonio Smith couldn't really become the leader that he was like on his way in, a bull in a china shop, becoming a leader. Meanwhile, there were guys like, I think, Fike and Garavaglia were around when he was a freshman, and I think Ray Weathers. So, some of that old guard and some of the new guard, not until they moved on could Antonio Smith really take over the locker room. It was in the process of happening anyway, but sometimes there's leaders that have to wait their turn. In 1999, Michigan State had some pretty good leadership, had a really good season. Bill Burke became a leader and so forth, but I'm not sure some of those leaders could really blossom until Cedric Irvin moved on. Everybody loved Cedric Irvin, but sometimes some players need to move on for others to blossom. I'm not sure if there are other leaders waiting to blossom, and I've not heard any ill will against Peyton Thorne internally at all. I mean, I'm at practices and press conferences, and I'm impressed with a lot of the people, and I watch things, and you watch the sidelines when things aren't going well, but I'm not really in the locker room really knowing what's going on. I've got some people that are good sources that tell me some things here and there, but I can't really speak to that. I'm not really sure what's going on leadership-wise. I don't think it's a problem right now, but leadership really doesn't get tested, I don't think, until you've had some disappointments, and hopefully you can go through a season with few disappointments. But last year Michigan State had a lot of them, and I thought they still battled together pretty well. I thought Michigan State put a good collective effort together that last game at Penn State when they could have quit. They didn't quit. They played pretty well, and that says something to Tucker, especially with the number of transfers on the roster. They were 5-6 trying to get into a bowl game, and I thought that, and I think that's a reflection of leadership. I think that part of it was pretty solid last year, despite the losses and all the injuries. That's my opinion.
Well,
I don't know.
Well, Kyle, before I go, because I know you got a lot to talk about, let me ask you an opinion thing, because I know the D-line wasn't 100% during the spring game, but maybe we talked about this before, but I think we're going to be able to run up the middle, man. Like, it's like the line looks like a Big Ten line, but not just that, like just in the scrimmage from like the run plays they had, like I didn't see necessarily, like they had success going around the side, but like they were putting holes up the middle. Like I saw at least 3 or 4 different times where a running back cut right through the middle through a big hole. Like what do you think? You think that was just wishful thinking, or how do you feel about it? Do you think the line is better now? Like are we in a space where we can bully the weak teams and at least push people out the way, or is it just I was just happy to see football and I just projected too much?
I think you were happy to see football on one hand, but also if the run game is playing real well in an inter-squad scrimmage, that raises questions about the defense, right? So you have to look to see if they're doing it against a first-string defense or a second-string defense. You can have a good run game, a good offensive line. If it's ones versus ones, you might only gain 2.5 yards, and you've still run a good play. But if your defense is good, 2.5 yards, that can be good football all the way around. Someone might see it as just a boring 2.5-yard play, but it can be symptomatic and signage of quality football, but it might not look that way. I thought it was interesting. Everybody talks about spring scrimmages. It's all real vanilla and everything. Michigan State ran a few run plays and kind of repeated the same ones, but it was kind of an intricate play they ran a lot. They did like a pin and pull trap. They ran the same play like 6 or 7 times. They only had, you know me, I'm a geek on these things, but it's my job, right? You guys want me to try to produce some sort of tangible observations. By my stats, you know, they ran, Michigan State's offense ran 10 running plays against 11-man defenses. Some of it was thud, some of it was, you know, scrimmaging, and each of the 5 running backs got 2 carries. And when I finally charted that, I'm like, well, that's pretty obvious that they scripted that. You know, Carter's going to get 2 carries, Simmons is going to get 2 carries, Mangum's going to get 2, Berger's going to get 2, Prim's going to get 2, and that's exactly the way it turned out. But Carter had an 8-yard run on one of those pull and pin traps. You know, you got left guard, you got a center, you got left guard pulling. Left guard Duplain's pin, center Samax pulling, and they leave the left tackle, kind of leaves the defensive end upfield, pulling center traps him. They block the defensive end. The center on one play was Fincher doing it. But anyway, when Carter gained 8 yards, Fincher was doing that. That might have been one of the plays with Nathan Carter that impressed you. I'm not sure who the defense was on that one. But the point is the offensive line looked like they had, you know, some decent-looking bodies, some footwork, you know, identifying their landmarks and getting to people and functioning. You know, it wasn't, they weren't running like the same inside zone play over and over and over. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but in terms of a vanilla, you know, spring scrimmage, sometimes that might be what you see. And certainly if you're running the inside zone doing well, you can just do it a bunch of times, and that can be a show of strength if you can make that work. But, and I heard this about some other scrimmages too, the offensive line just doing some intricate blocking, some run play things, and just having their crap together, to use one of my basketball terms. It's been a while. The offensive line's been under construction. They've got some veterans in there. I do think the offensive line is headed in the right direction. And I don't think they were bad last year on the offensive line, but I do think that they're about ready to turn the corner and be a good, functional, productive offensive line. What's the young one's name, Callie Spartan?
Oh, Edward Cole.
Is Cole a Michigan fan or a Buckeye fan?
Oh, no.
You know, we used to have a cat here. Don't have the cat anymore. It was a good cat. Rest the cat's soul. I got along okay with the cat. I swear that cat was a Michigan fan. I could just tell. I could tell our cat was a Wolverine fan. You know, sometimes you just tell.
He's just a little hungry.
Good. All right, anything else? We'll probably let you go. But any other thoughts? I appreciate you checking in and contributing to the conversation here on May 2nd. When you know, in the old days, May 2nd meant everything was positive and there's not a lot of football to talk about. Those days have changed as college football has changed, and this is not going to be the last time that we've been talking about the portal in the month of May if the system remains as it is. And I see no indication it's going to change anytime soon. Late April is going to become hot for college football talk because of the portal.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I was just happy to see the show's back on, Comp.
All right, man.
I'll let you later, man.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it, Kelly Spartan. Thanks for calling in. All right. So it's good to hear from him. Mr. Jones, we'll I love hearing from Mr. Jones. I'll put it back up. He'll probably call here in a second. Anyway, let's go back to let's go here to the comments area. I'll go back and try to find my place. And haven't seen any trolling yet. We'll be looking for that. If anything gets out of hand, we'll go and show people the door and take out the garbage. And I might miss it before it happens. Anyway, what do we have here? That was James Wyndham that asked, do I think the secondary will be significantly better this year? Okay, so Xavier Henderson was hurt last year. Got hurt, was it the first game? Missed 4 games. That was a huge loss. Kendall Brooks comes in, and he was pretty good. Kendall Brooks coming in from North Greenville University out of South Carolina, did not play at all in 2021. And he was second string. I wasn't sure if he was going to play or not. Henderson gets hurt. Kendall Brooks goes in there and plays well, which is interesting. Gets a free agent, got a free agent signing as well also. But it still wasn't Xavier Henderson, right? So the secondary with Mel Tucker trying to coach the corners, Xavier Henderson gets hurt. Kendall Brooks was in there. Mangum gets hurt. They all get hurt there at safety, right? They tried Angelo Gross. That didn't work out. Tried Chester Kimbrough at the slot. Got burned against Washington. He gets out. We don't see him for a month and a half. He disappears. Darius Snow getting hurt as an inside linebacker was a problem. All right, so this year is the secondary going to be better? First of all, here we go.
Call from.
Malcolm Jones Sr.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
All right, let's go to Lees County, Georgia. Malcolm Jones Sr. Did I get the county right? Is it Lee County, Georgia?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Mr. Malcolm Jones, you are on the air, Spartan Mag Live. Welcome to the show on May 2nd, 2023. How are you doing, sir?
How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Been trying to write a lot of things, as a member of the media covering the football team and just behind the plate calling balls and strikes,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's been a while since I heard from you.
Yeah, we were off for a while. What do you make of all this portal, these portal things that are going on? Speaking with Malcolm Jones Sr., the father of Michigan State redshirt freshman safety Malcolm Jones Jr. This is Malcolm Jones Sr. from down there in Lee County, Georgia. What are your thoughts about this transfer portal stuff?
This transfer, it's good in a way, but you're getting a lot of people swapping in and out, and folks are just leaving. It's basically like an NIL deal. They're giving them more money, so they're swapping out. It's just like pro. You get a bigger contract, you just go to a different school. That's all it is.
It's pro, and you know what? Why shouldn't it be pro? Because the television contract is pro, and the ticket prices are pro, and the coaches are getting paid like pros. So why shouldn't the rest of it be pro?
Yes, it could be all right, pros, but if you're not playing, this is how I feel. If you ain't playing and you can get an NIL deal to go to play at another school, and that's what's happening. Everybody's just jumping around.
Right. I got you. So may I ask, what are you hearing from Malcolm Jones Jr.? I watched him in the spring scrimmage. He played nickel. I thought he was with the 2s and with the 3s during the spring game. And it seemed to me, my notes on him, I thought he played with some springy shock. Springy. He's got some spring to him, and when he latches into somebody, when he's taking on a block, he has some force against those blockers. It's the first time I've seen him really square up and play. We saw him a little bit in special teams last year, but it's the first time I saw him play in a situation like this. Looks to me like that's a young man who's on schedule. What did you think? Did you watch it on TV? Were you up here for that? What did you think?
No, I didn't. I haven't come up for it. I watched it on TV. Mm-hmm. But they scrimmage was different. They did a little walk-ons, and it was real different than you watch the other spring games.
Right.
They did some walkthroughs. That to me that was better to me.
Yeah.
You got hands on. You're going fast and you're going slow, and then you're trying to conserve your players. You ain't trying to get none of your players hurt like last year. A lot of their players got hurt last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, preserving players was a big deal for them this year. I'm trying to. I think I might have counted about 39. I've got it right here. I had 30. I counted 30 plays of live scrimmaging, and 15 plays of thud. Where you take on a block and you get to the ball carrier and you don't tackle them to the ground. You just thud them up. So 45 snaps. I've watched some other spring games on ESPN and Big Ten Network. Some rosters are strong enough where they'll have a game and so forth, but I've seen some other ones like North Carolina where it was less than thud. Just snap after snap on the ACC network of something that was less than thud walkthrough. You mentioned walkthrough. Big Ten Network televised it. They had, there were some individual drills. It was basically a practice for half the day, and then the second half of the day was scrimmaging. Like I said, 30 live snaps. I don't think you want to go out there and play 80 live snaps.
No.
And Michigan State was low on defensive linemen, so you can only run so many snaps. Now, there's some Michigan State fans, on our message board. They're like, man, I don't care. I'm not going to go unless it's going to be a real game. I wish they'd have a real game. So what they need to do for those stupid people, if I can use harsh language, is they should turn the scoreboard on and just call it offense versus defense and call the offense green and the defense white and put a score up there 20-14 and kind of keep it internal as to what the scoring system is just to shut up all those stupid people, just to give them a scoreboard and a score to look at and just run a damn practice. You know what I'm saying? Which is what they did. So I'll probably mention that to Mel. I'm gonna just turn the scoreboard on and put a score up there. Now D'Antonio used to do that. They used to have a draft, which was really interesting, and the players would draft. It was something that Jim Tressel used to do at Ohio State. So I think they were the seniors. The seniors were divided up, and they would draft, and you would get an idea of what the players thought internally about who the better players were, and that was very interesting. And you could do that if your roster is deep and ready. But in these days of players going to the portal, I don't know if they're ever going to have 65 players available for a spring to do that. But near the end of the D'Antonio era, they didn't have really the numbers to do the draft anymore, so they would have a scrimmage. They had an offense versus defense, and other scrimmages that they would do during the course of the spring. They'd call them a jersey scrimmage, offense versus defense. And D'Antonio would, he would have his guys keeping score. But no matter what happened in the scrimmage, at the very end of it, the numbers would be massaged and changed and affected enough so that I think it was usually the backup quarterback had the ball with the offense with a chance to win at the end. And the starting defense had to try to stop them. No matter what happened during the course of the scrimmage, a play might happen here and someone in the defense would get 11 points for it. Then the offense would get 1 point for something. Whatever, he would make sure that the score was close enough that somebody would have the ball with a chance to win at the end. There would never be a blowout because they'd kind of cook the books on the scoreboard a little bit, right? So maybe that's what Michigan State needs to do. Just turn on the scoreboard and keep scoring some cockamamie way and make sure at the very end you have a chance to run a 2-minute drill and everybody goes home and goes over to Crunchies and has a bucket of beer.
Well, I feel like this. As I've seen it on TV, it looked like it was a good crowd. So, I mean,
it was pretty
if
good.
they didn't want to go out there with a scoreboard, I mean, why you want your players to get hurt and then you don't have nobody for the season?
Absolutely. You're making too much sense. I'm just talking about that 10% that's always complaining about something. For the spring scrimmage, I think it was 81 degrees, but I'm sure someone somewhere was complaining that it wasn't 79.
Yeah. But then you think about it, you get them guys out there, it's hot, and then, somebody get hurt, and then you're going to go, well, why they do it this way? You're never going to make folks happy. Never.
So they had some good scrimmage again. They played, a few plays that were live, a chance to look at some 2s and 3s. And I've got these notes on Malcolm Jones Jr. here. I got a plus next to his name on one particular play. And like I said, plays with some springy shock. There was one time when Terrell Henry, a good wide receiver, was coming to block him, and Malcolm Jones did a really good job of defeating that block. And then he converged on running back Davion Prim. Same foot, same shoulder, boom, put a nice hit into him, tackle, plus play for Malcolm Jones Jr. right there, Mr. Jones. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yes, sir. Do
you remember that play? Do you remember that play?
Yeah, I remember it.
I saw it.
Yes, sir.
I saw it.
I watch him play all the time, so I actually know his moves and all that.
Mm-hmm.
He just needs, whatever he does this year. If he don't start, if he play, I'll just be happy. I just want them to all everybody just to be happy to play together. That's
Mm-hmm.
all it is. And see, the thing about that is, if you make a mistake, don't put your player down. Just pat him on the back. Say, hey, we get him the next time.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like a very healthy disposition, sir. That's a good way of looking at things. Malcolm is 6 foot, 200 pounds right now as a redshirt freshman. With that frame, I got to believe he can carry 210 real comfortably. And I think he's right on schedule. I think he's right where he should be.
I think so too, but I know that he was saying he was playing nickel and he was playing some safety. So I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it I've seen him in the nickel, more in the nickel than I've seen him at safety.
In that slot area, and they like to have somebody in that slot area that can do what I just mentioned: defeat a wide receiver block and put a shoulder into somebody. In the Big Ten, you're going to run into Michigan, you're going to run into Iowa, Wisconsin. And sometimes you're playing that nickel in a 4-2-5. You need that fifth guy, the guy in the slot, to be able to make a transition against the run game. Angelo Gross is doing a pretty good job of that. I think he might have a pretty good season. I think he showed some things in the pass defense, which has been a problem for Angelo Gross in recent years. He made a nice pass breakup in the spring scrimmage. For his sake, I'm hoping that he can turn the corner as a pass defender this year, and I think he's got it in him to do that. But Angelo Gross has always been a good physical run stopper there from the slot. And he's a senior. I don't know if he's got another year after that, but Malcolm Jones coming up in there behind him. I know Ade Willie has been a guy that's been in the slot a little bit. Chester Kimbrough has played some slot, but he's more of a corner that they would play in the slot against more of a pass-oriented team. I think there's a chance that Malcolm Jones might be able to give him some of that hybrid ability, that he can play the run or, take those pass drops and play some pass defense. That remains to be seen, but I thought that he rang the bell a couple times in that spring scrimmage, and that was interesting to see. All right, Mr. Malcolm Jones, go ahead. What else you got?
I got the way I see the defense, and before I get ready to go, you got all the guys. You got Carly, you got Spencer, and then you got all them guys. They used to playing. Some play corner, some play safety. So you can actually mix them up. So you don't have to play them. You can give everybody a breather, because that defense, I think, is going to be really good this year.
It's got a chance
with the other redshirt freshmen that come in there. If they all keep their head together and play together, they have a strong defense.
There is some optimism and excitement about the young defensive backs. Jaden Mangum and Spencer back there at the safety positions are going to start this year as true sophomores. Dylan Tatum played a little bit at corner last year as a true freshman. He's a true sophomore. He's got a good chance to start at corner. Charles Brantley coming back. They needed him to come back. He's got to take care of some things. Marquis Lowry's healthy. I think he's going to hit. I think he's functional there at corner and maybe even capable of being better than we saw from him in 2021, which wasn't bad. Ade Willie, Caleb Coley, that group, and Malcolm Jones Jr. So you got Malcolm Jones Jr., Spencer, Mangum, Tatum, Coley, Willie, all those guys in that defensive backs class, they feel good about. And they're going to need to lean on those guys, because a lot of those guys are going to be on the field. I think the starting defensive backfield is going to be Brantley, Tatum, and then Spencer and Mangum. So Spencer, Mangum, and Tatum, those are three true sophomores that have good futures, but they're getting pushed out of the nest early. And we'll see what they got. I'm hearing good things about Malik Spencer. I'm hearing real good things about him.
I was trying to figure out the new guy they got in the portal, Amari Smith. He's a safety that they got from Cincinnati.
Amarian Smith, yeah. Coming in, he was originally from River Rouge. He's a kid from the Detroit area, from River Rouge, 6'1", 175, coming in from Cincinnati. Last year he had 20 tackles. Last season, he had 5 in the bowl game against Louisville. They were in the Fenway Bowl in Boston. Had an interception on that one also. I saw a video of that today. It was cover 3. He was deep center field safety. Came over and made an interception. I think that he gives them some depth there at safety, and they need it, because behind Mangum and behind Spencer, that second string, you got Khalil Majid, a walk-on, Harold Joyner, a former running back who's doing the best he can, but maybe not. They needed help at safety, and it made sense for them to go out there and look for somebody, and he's coming in with a little bit of experience. I think he's going to be a depth player, I think. Spencer and Mangum, and people get dinged up, so that's a good body. Yeah. I thought that was a good body for them to add. That's a guy that they looked at closely on the recruiting trail back when he was coming out of River Rouge, Michigan. So now he's coming back to the state of Michigan. That's someone in the portal that they knew a little bit about, and I thought that was a good addition to the roster.
Yes, sir.
I'm not guaranteeing he's going to be like an impact player, but it makes sense. It's a position of need. It's a guy that's been on the field at Cincinnati, which is a good program. It's a guy they've known. The frame is solid. He's got some good football ahead of him. Put him in the depth chart, put him in the talent pool, let him compete.
Yes. Well, you have a good night, I'll call you back again another time.
Sounds great, Mr. Jones. We appreciate you coming on. You have a great evening as well, and be good down there in Lee County, Georgia, okay?
Okay.
There he goes. All right.
Bye-bye.
All right. A couple of regulars there. It's good to hear from both of those gentlemen, bringing some insight and some observations to the show. Spartan Mag Live. That's how we do it here. Let's go back to we'll go over to the comments area in a moment, but let me knock off a couple more of these mailbag questions. Oh, by the way, Collie Spartan was also asking me, just pointing out that it's been a while, or as he said, it's been a minute since I've been on, since before the tournament. But another thing, I've been coaching a little bit. Some people that have been following the show for a while know that I've been coaching for several years, age group in the summer and so forth. Now my player is a senior, so these are the last 4 weeks of his high school career and the last 4 weeks of me being a baseball dad. So that's going to be a transition. I've been doing some assistant coaching over at Okemos High School. A lot of good kids over there. Love those kids. I've known a lot of those guys for a long time. And there's a lot of good teams on the schedule, a lot of really good teams here locally. DeWitt, Grand Ledge, Waverly, Mason, East Lansing, Hazlet. It's nice, good level of competition around here, good sportsmanship too, and it's been a privilege to be a part of it. So I did not go over to practice today. I'll be at practice tomorrow. I got a few thousand more pitches left in this from 43 feet away at 49 miles an hour. It's the best I can do, guys. But I have been known to throw 300 pitches in a practice and come back 3 days later and do it again. Maybe not days in a row, but do my best out there. But that's another reason that I've not been here doing SpartanMag Live. But it's been fun, and there have been some times in previous summers when I've had to take time off from SpartanMag Live because of coaching, but my coaching days are coming to an end, and it's going to be an adjustment, and a little bit sad about it, but that's the way it is. But SpartanMag Live, I think we'll have more time to have more of those more regularly this summer than we have in previous summers, so look forward to that. Also, let's see what we've got here. All right. Matt from Grand Rapids asks, what's your post-spring expectation for the defense this year? We could do an entire podcast on that. Mooby and I have talked about that just in our general phone conversations. And it's interesting that you say that because I came out of, I thought defense could be okay. I mean, defense has been outside the top 100 the last 2 years. So just being okay would be a big step in the right direction. It would take a lot of improvement to just be merely okay. But I think it's going to be okay. Can't have injuries like last year. But square number one, from a foundational standpoint, defensive line is going to be pretty good. And I think it's going to be quite good on the defensive line. I don't know if there's like the edge pass rushers. But first things first, Tucker wanted to get better against the run, setting the edge. As Mark D'Antonio used to call it, the C-gap area, taking on the tight end, taking on the strong side, winning defensive end, beating a tight end, beating a double team, setting an edge. That's what they brought to me, say, Adeleye here for. Chris Bogle, I thought, was pretty good last year against the run. He was hurt in the second or third game. He's been productive at Florida a little bit in the pass rush, but we didn't get to see a whole season out of him. He comes back. He's eager to be a starter or compete to become a starter, but he'll be good against the run. Tunmise is going to be good against the run. He's a transfer from Texas A&M. Zion Young last year was forced into early playing time because of injuries and so forth, and that's a big young guy out of Florida that was a really good evaluation in the previous recruiting class. Looked really good. To the point, I remember Mooby and I had a conversation about that when the season was over. I was like, Zion Young looked good. And I was like, they're going to have to play defense on that guy. Meaning, they're going to have to keep people away from Zion Young. The way they're trying to keep people away from Keon Coleman right now, in the days and months and years ahead, they're going to have to do that with Zion Young. It's a Florida kid. They're going to be coming after him. By the way, with Keon Coleman, I said that on this podcast last year and in previous months that they were going to come after Keon Coleman. It was going to happen. So we shouldn't be surprised about that. That's what you hope happens when you go down south and get a good 3-star or even a 4-star. You hope they come in and play well, and you hope that 2 and 3 years later, LSU and Tennessee's coming over trying to buy them for $800,000 or something like that. You hope they play that well, right? And if you're a real program, you've got the money to play defense on that. Some people might be uncomfortable with that, but that's the way the game's going to be played now. And if you're going to be committed to the entire enterprise, that's what it's going to require. So Bogle and Adeleye and Zion Young are defensive ends that can play the run. Avery Dunn last year was forced into playing time, and he survived. He was all right. And he's got another year older now. Brandon Wright's still around. Not bad. By Job comes in. Does he give them some pass rush help as a true freshman right away? Hard to expect that from a true freshman right away, but I've just mentioned 6 guys at defensive end. Ken Talley, heard some good things about him. I watched him closely in the spring game. I thought he was just kind of okay. Let me look at the notes. I hear good things. He's still new, so I don't. Let's see here. He was okay. Stanton Ramil closed him off once or twice. I had Ken Talley being firm against Parachek on an outside run once, but that was Parachek, high school kid. Just average on a double team against Hampton Fay when Hampton Fay was playing tight end and Stanton Ramil. Stanton Ramil looks really good. I mean, that guy does not look like a freshman. Was he 6'7", and he's well proportioned, and he moves well. He's not awkward at all. I mean, proportioned from leg top to bottom, head to toe, proportioned, lateral movement. You know, doesn't get over his skis. You know, he bends at the knee, and Stanton Ramil looks good. Double team Stanton Ramil against Fay, and Ken Talley was just kind of averaging his double team on an outside zone at Ken Talley. So Ken Talley, the transfer from Penn State, he's a freshman. But Bogle, Adeleye, Zion Young, those guys are going to be firm at defensive end. Avery Dunn's going to be functional. Got 4 defensive ends right there. That's solid. Brandon Wright's competing in there to get in there. By Job, does he play on third downs? I don't know what he's going to be. I think he's got a good future. Do you get much from him right away? I don't know. But they'll be good against the run. Defensive tackle's going to be good against the run. Simeon Barrow, one of the more underrated defensive tackles in the Big Ten. He'll be solid. Derek Harmon was pretty good last year. I think he's a star in the making at defensive tackle. Maverick Hansen, good, solid, proven contributor. Does Hansen start at defensive tackle next to Barrow, or does Harmon start? It's going to be a good competition. Either way, you have 3 good defensive tackles at 2 positions. Meanwhile, they go to the portal to get Jared Jackson, big, huge guy. I went and watched Florida State game, I think against NC State. He's okay. He's huge at 6'6", 300 plus. I think he's just a guy. I don't know if he's a dude. He might be somewhere between a guy and a dude. A dude is like a dude that's going to have an impact, and a guy is just like a guy that can come in and run plays. Until I see more, I think Jared Jackson is somewhere between there. Watching his film last year, didn't get to see him in the spring because he was banged up a little bit. DeAndre Butler coming in from Liberty. I watched their bowl game. He was coming off the bench. I think he's just kind of a guy. Van Sumeren's in there trying to develop a little bit, but the big 3 are those 3, Hansen, Harmon, and Barrow. One of those other guys can come in and give them 4, and that's what you kind of need 4 as long as you stay away from injuries. 4 defensive tackles, those defensive ends. Starting right there, stopping the run, Michigan State's going to be pretty good at it. That doesn't mean they're going to stop the run against Michigan. Michigan might be able to run against everybody, I don't know. But against most teams, it starts right there, setting the edge, stopping the run. I think they'll be pretty good in there. Linebackers, Winman, Brule, Halliday, those 3 for 2 positions, they're going to be solid there. In the slot area, when Angelo Gross is playing slot against the run, he'll be good. So stopping the run's going to be pretty good as long as everybody's on the same page. You know, playing that 2-gap system, sometimes do they get confused? I don't know. It needs to be good. If there's not a lot of injuries this year, that defense can't be number 90 in the country. We all know that. But I think the bodies there in the defensive front 7 are pretty good. So coming out of the spring, I feel I kind of liked what I saw with Adeleye. Brule is taking some steps, I think. But just get another look at that defense again. You know, Dylan Tatum, I mean, is he built to be a corner? Is he an inside guy? He's got the feet to play corner. Is he a corner for the rest of his career? We'll have to wait and see. I mean, give him credit as an athlete to go out there and stick and do some things at corner for now. I mean, that secondary's got a lot to prove. But I come out of it thinking that defense can be pretty good, which is a bold statement for as bad as they've been. I think pretty good is within reach. Is that too much? Is that setting the bar too high? Is that unrealistic Kool-Aid pretty good? I don't know. That's what I think about the defense. All right, question number 5, and we'll be talking about that all summer. Sherlock from Burbank, California. Now, Sherlock's not from Burbank, but he's in Burbank this week, apparently. He says, he must be working on a mystery without any clues. He says, can you guess our starting wide receiver group if Keon does not come back? 3 wide receivers. I'm thinking Trey Mosley, of course. And, you know, where that hurts is with Jeremy Bernard moving on. But it does get thin in terms of proven players. You know, the number of proven wide receivers, it's getting thin a little bit. But I think it's going to be Trey Mosley, of course, and then Montori Foster and Terrell Henry is what I'm thinking. I've heard good things about Jerron Glover. I didn't necessarily see it in the scrimmage, but I heard he did well in the first 2 scrimmages. Antonio Gates is a guy with a lot of ability who, the light flickers a little bit. The light needs to come on and stay on, and he's got ability. But I'm thinking Mosley, Coleman, and Henry is what I'm guessing. And those guys, they've got some proving to do. They're going to be unproven there. Question number 6, Spartan 1996 from Parts Unknown. He says, if Tucker has a losing season in year 4, is he on the hot seat? He says, we haven't seen a coach with 2 non-bowl seasons since John L. Smith. A 3rd losing season in 4 years is what got John L. Smith fired. Fair point. Fair point. Some of that would be, what does it look like? Hot seat with the contract, that would be difficult to swallow. I think that the football program right now is kind of taking a step backward and kind of a reset to almost like a rebuild. And I know that a rebuild shouldn't happen in year 4, but the nature of college football is in such upheaval right now, and you threw COVID into there. I don't know, you're giving him a losing season during the COVID year. That season's a wash. I mean, Izzo almost had a losing season that year. And then they go out and recruit that year off the Zoom, the first recruiting class. It's his 4th season, but in some ways, and the 2021 happened, Ken Walker, they caught lightning in a bottle there and made it happen, and they were clutch to pull out some wins. That was great. But, in human years, 1 year is like 7 years of dog years. So in COVID football with portal and people getting used to that and NIL and all that, is 4 seasons really 4 seasons? In my book, I don't know. I would hate it if you had like a really good coach and you pulled the plug on it in this climate. I know it's a long time ago, but Frank Beamer of Virginia Tech really struggled his first 6 years. Really struggled. By the same token, Wisconsin pulled the plug on Paul Chryst, right? We'll have to wait and see how that works out. And they made a good hire. So there have been others that have pulled the plug and it hasn't gone so well. I mean, Tennessee's been in the wilderness for 20 years. They think they're good now. They think they are. We'll see. They beat Alabama, plant a flag. Did they win another game after that? I don't know. But, they got a good offense. Heupel's pretty good. They're out there buying a lot of good players, so they should be good. But 9-3 doesn't cut it for those people down there either. So for 25 years, they've been in the wilderness. So Tucker has a high ceiling. I think we've established that. He's got a personality and energy and a vision for what he wants to do. Has there been some mistakes? Yeah. Did Nick Saban make some mistakes early? Yeah. Did Mark D'Antonio make some mistakes early? Yes. Was Nick Saban on the hot seat going into 1999? Some people thought so. They went 9-2, and he was gone because he got the sense that people thought he was on the hot seat. He didn't appreciate that much. He was looking for the next bus out of town once he got the leg up. So if you've got a good coach, it's I don't know. It's a tough question. I mean that's up to other people. Would I think so? I would think no, especially after what happened in 2021 and the way that when he won, just the way the fan base gravitated to him. They were they're always happy for a coach, but I got the sense that the Michigan State fan base was really happy and really proud of Mel Tucker. And if Michigan State can kind of get into that 8-win, 9-win thing over the course of time and recruit better and better, that the ceiling is good enough to do the things that fans hope for and maybe became spoiled by in 2013, 14, and 15. Now, is the floor lower in some ways? Maybe it is. But bet big, win big. All right. Question 7, PA Spartan from Pennsylvania says, if either or both players withdraw their name from the portal, what is the damage done in the locker room at this point, or is it just considered a part of business today in NCAA college football and basketball? Yeah, I don't think, if they come back, I don't think there's damage in the locker room. I don't think so. I think they get over it. Question 8, HS Spartan from Harbor Springs says, how many on the board seem to be most concerned about losing Coleman? He says, many on the board seem to be more concerned about losing Keon Coleman. He says, however, losing an experienced senior quarterback who has seen success, 11-2, and failure, 5-7, seems a greater loss to me. This is HS Spartan talking, Harbor Springs Spartan. He says, Thorne's potential replacements do not have one college start, and you cannot teach experience. Aren't our coming growing pains at quarterback likely to cost us several games this fall, particularly without a rock-solid defense? Question from Spartan in Harbor Springs. Good points. You might be right. You raise a good point that losing a quarterback, an experienced quarterback, is more important than losing Coleman. Stated your point real well. I don't necessarily agree, but by October, I might agree if Noah Kim becomes the starter and struggles. But you make a good point. Question 9 from Parts Unknown. His name is Trouble with a Snap. He says, did something happen that is causing these portal movements? Keon is very good, so it's understandable maybe testing the market. But same day as Thorne and Brantley and Thorne maybe got pushed to the second string. Seems odd that big money would be thrown to them pre-portal entry. All right, so that's a statement in his question. Well, the reason that it happened when it did, because it was the last day that the portal window was open. So people had to make a decision right then, so those decisions were made at the 11th hour. So that's why they all happened at the same time. And all three of them had different reasons for going in. Question 10, Bill from Byron Center. He says, can you share any insight or drop any hints without violating non-disclosure agreements as to the probability of Keon Coleman and or Peyton Thorne exiting the portal and returning to Michigan State? Just that we've heard that Mel Tucker has had a sit down with Keon Coleman, so communications are good. Michigan State's going to try to mobilize some funds to try to make it worthwhile to stay. What will Michigan State show him in terms of what the quarterback situation is going to look like next year? We'll have to wait and see. I know that Mel Tucker is going to push the fact that Michigan State has had 2 receivers drafted in each of the past 2 years, and Jaden Reed becoming a second-round draft pick without the physical skills of Keon Coleman. I think that Keon Coleman feels good about Courtney Hawkins and his development under Courtney Hawkins as a wide receivers coach. So the pitch is going to be come back to Michigan State, work with Courtney some more, work on your routes a little bit more. We've got Noah Kim probably. There'll be more, more routes available to you in terms of arm strength. I mean, it remains to be seen about accuracy and avoiding mistakes and so forth, which is the key to the quarterback position. And we don't know how Noah Kim is in that regard until we see him play, if he becomes the guy. But that'll be the pitch to Coleman. I think Coleman's open-minded, still around town. I think he's around town. I don't know. But they had a sit-down. Maybe it was a Zoom sit-down. I'm not sure specifically about that. But then it's going to come down to whether Michigan State can be, I got to believe it's going to come down to whether Michigan State can be competitive in an NIL standpoint. And, talking with some people this weekend that are kind of close to the Michigan State situation, they're going to find out how competitive Michigan State is there. And if he's being offered astronomical amounts, does Michigan State match that or approach it? Those are decisions that have to be made if the money gets circulated correctly. And again, I don't blame Keon Coleman for going out there and looking into it. All right, so question number 11, Nolan. Oh, that was the one we did earlier. That was Nolan Schroeder from Grand Rapids. All right, we got some other questions, but let's just go back over here to the comments section. We've got all off season to tackle some of those other questions, and then we'll wrap it up. I got to find the comments area where to go. Appreciate. Oh, what just happened there? Sorry about that. Look out. I don't know what happened there. Look out. What happened there? Does that look better? I'm trying to hit this thing right there. Is that it? No. See, if I'd been at rehearsal, I'd know all these things. There it is. There it is. Okay. Let's go back up here to the comments area. Good to have Harriet Dean here. I think that she was over at the This is Sparta podcast. I think this might be her first SpartanMag Live. Good to have her there. There's a lot of new names here. Appreciate that. Sean Little says hello, Jim. Mr. Bowman says great job on This is Sparta. Thank you. And thank you to all of you for giving us likes and subscribing to the channel. It's always good to get more subscribers. We are closing in on 7,500, I think, now. I was hoping to get to 7,000 by Thanksgiving. That didn't quite happen, but we had some good stuff going on during the winter and heading into March Madness, and we're closing in towards 7,500. We appreciate that, and we'd like to have a lot more today. So give us a like and subscribe. Do us a favor. That really helps us out a lot. Marlon Milano says, what up, Jim? Good to see Marlon here. Nick Harrington says, hello. Says, yo, comp, checking in from Florida. This should be a good one. All right. Noah Sprunger says, subscribe to SpartanMag.com for just $9.99 a month or $29.99 until 31. That is, if you subscribe right now, you pay $29.99, and that gets you through to August 31st. That would include all of our coverage through the offseason, which includes a lot of recruiting camp coverage and all of preseason August camp, which is going to be interesting depending on what's going on at quarterback. So like Noah Sprunger says, subscribe to Spartan Mag. We'd love to have you as a new subscriber over there. Check it out. Marlon Milano says, I think the defense is going to turn the corner this year. Marlon's got some optimism, and I don't disagree. To what extent remains to be seen. Schedule's very difficult. I mean, Michigan State can be a pretty good defense, but dealing with Ohio State, Washington, and Michigan, Penn State, those offenses, you can be a good defense and still give up upwards of, give up some points against those teams. We'll see if those teams turn out to be what they're supposed to be. Robert Rosen says, how come no one is hyping up Noah Kim? I've seen him throw 55-plus yards running opposite arm. The guy can throw lasers. He does. He can wing it. In his completion percentage in mop-up duty, it's like 72% in actual games. I'm not saying he'll continue to throw 72%, but he does look pretty good at times, doesn't he? And he came to Michigan State kind of a little bit undervalued because he had been injured as a junior. Was it a junior? I have to go back and look at it. But he played for a team in Virginia that was a perennial state championship contender. I think they might have won the state title when he was a sophomore. And then they were in the semifinals as a junior, became injured. And then I think he missed all the camps that summer due to the injury, which is similar. It's kind of reminiscent of Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins had his recruitment interrupted by injuries. I think he might have missed his whole junior season at Holland Christian and then kind of came out of nowhere in camp before his senior year. Kirk Cousins did. There's some similarities between Cousins and Kim in terms of their trek and why they were kind of a little bit under the radar. But with Noah Kim, go back over a little bit later in the summer because we'll do that some other time. But he does throw some lasers. I agree with that. Some of the incompletions, he overthrew Montori Foster on a hitch and go. He didn't really have touch on that, but later in the scrimmage, he showed some touch on a deep one down the sideline. All right, we could go over some of those. We'll do that some other time. We got all summer to talk about some of those things. Old Suck says Thorne would not be leaving if he didn't think he was beaten out. We were his first Power 5 offer. He says Thorne would not be leaving if he didn't think he was being beaten out. That's kind of the way I'm thinking. If nothing else, he knows that his job is in jeopardy. It's got to be the only thing we can think of. Plus, there might be a little disrespect factor there, and they're trying to keep communication lines open. But I think you're onto something there. Brian V says healthy Bogle and Tumise Adeleye going to make that defensive line a whole hell of a lot better. Old Tuck says things working against us. Michigan State with Coleman, location, LSU quarterback, LSU coach, most likely money. Yep. Location, LSU quarterback, LSU coach. Yeah, Brian Kelly's pretty good, and the quarterback's good. Nussmeier is staying there as the backup quarterback, which was like an announcement. Garrett Nussmeier, the son of former Michigan State quarterbacks coach Doug Nussmeier. Marlon Milano says, facts, Brian, Bogle and TA plus Burrow. Nice. Brian V says, don't forget about Derek Harmon. He's poised for breakout year. MSU Hunter Spartan says, Spartans facing one of the toughest schedules this fall. No question. It might be the toughest schedule in the country. And you're going to hear me say this a lot this summer. But you can be a good team. You can be a top 25 caliber team. You can be a top 20 team. You can be one of the 20 best teams in the country and go 7-5 with Michigan State's schedule. You could be like the number 20. Who's number 20 in the country? Let's just say. Who is it? I don't know. Let's just say it's Baylor. I don't know. Who's? Well, let's look to see who was number 20 last year. AP top 25. If it's an SEC school, it might be hard to do apples to apples. Number 25. 24, 23 was South Carolina. Pittsburgh was 22. Let's use them. Pitt Panthers were 22. Good for them. They finished strong. 25 was Texas. They were a big disappointment. They went 8-5. Fresno was 24. South Carolina was 23 at 8-5. Any of those teams. Pittsburgh 9-4. Let's say Pittsburgh. They number 22 in the country, 9-4. Good year for Narduzzi. Nothing against them, but are they beating Penn State? Well, that's a rivalry game. They give them a tough game, but let's say no. Are they beating Washington? Washington was. DeBoer was good at quarterback, and Michael Penix in the pre-snap read before that game, when I was watching them early in the season, I wrote on the pre-snap read, and I put it on the underground bunker. I'm like, this guy's better. He's right there with C.J. Stroud, which sounded ridiculous last year on September 10th. And I'm like, to me, Michael Penix looks like he's right there with C.J. Stroud. As the season went along, I thought Penix was better than C.J. Stroud. Sue me. The way he played the rest of the year, I didn't look wrong. Anyway, does Pittsburgh beat them? Washington puts up points. They put up points. No, they don't beat Washington. Does Pittsburgh beat Michigan? No. Does Pittsburgh beat Ohio State? No. Does Pittsburgh win at Iowa? At Iowa. Good defense last year for Iowa. Now they bring in Cade McNamara, who's going to be a good game manager. They got Eric All at tight end. Their offense was terrible last year. Winning at Iowa. Does Pittsburgh win at Iowa? I'm talking about last year's Pittsburgh team. I haven't studied last year's Pittsburgh team. They're pretty good. Again, 9-4. They had some bobbles midway through the year, but they finished strong. My point is that Pittsburgh team that last year finished number 23, 24 in the country, I think they're 7-5 with this schedule. And that's if you win the other winnable games. When you're dealing with Rutgers and Maryland and some of the other teams on the schedule, the other winnable games are not easy either. So you're going to hear me say that a bunch of times. It's going to be a tough year. But the point is, MSU Hunter Spartan says Spartans facing one of the toughest schedules this fall. Yes. If Michigan, well, we'll be talking about that for a while. All right, Old Tuck says neighborhood getting rougher. Fickle, Rule, Kelly, Riley, Bielema is back. Fleck trending up. Mel's got his hands full. You're exactly right. It is a tough neighborhood. And you could get caught in a situation right now if you're changing coaches all the time. So we'll see what happens with Fickle. I think Fickle's pretty good. But I think he's really good. But sometimes you change scenery and you go someplace. There have been a lot of so-called really good hires that haven't worked out. So Wisconsin, you can win there, but now they're kind of stepping away from the Barry Alvarez thing a little bit. But I do think Fickle is good. I think Tressel's good on that defense. They should be all right. But expectations are pretty high, and they got rid of Christ kind of quickly. We'll see how that works out. Kirk Baldwin says, Solari also said Thorne did not hear from Tucker that there would be an open competition before the spring game news conference. Yeah, I heard him say that. I'd have to go back and re-listen to what Thorne said after the game. But I that's not what I heard. I heard like in December, Tucker brought the quarterbacks in and said it's going to be wide open next year. So I'd have to look to see if Thorne said that or if Chris heard that from somebody. But all I can go by is what I heard in December. I'll have to go back and re-listen to that press conference. Brian V says, Zion, Young, and Avery done. Young guys on the rise, too. Plenty to be excited about. So these guys were talking about defensive line like an hour before I started breaking it down, and you guys are agreeing with what I said, so I don't feel like a complete idiot. Hayden Fisher says, pretty evident where Old Tuck stands. Chucky Houston says college football has changed, really. No rules in the transfer portal. You don't like where you're at, you just transfer. Also, you don't have to sit out a year. No rules. Exactly right. Will Stallworth says, just read that Coleman had a meeting with Tuck yesterday in his office. Good sign. Had a meeting. Yeah, we talked about that a minute ago. Audrey Dahlgren from Channel 6 in Lansing, really good news reporter. I think she broke that news nugget. I'm not surprised based on some things I heard, about Tucker on Sunday and what he was hoping to do. So Coleman still being in town is good. A moment ago I said I wasn't sure if it was a Zoom or a sit down. I thought it was a sit down, but I didn't want to assume anything. But if it was in his office, it's good for Michigan State that he's still in town. Like I said, everything that I've heard is that Keon Coleman is not like dying to leave Michigan State. He would like a reason to stay at Michigan State. But he's got to look at a lot of things because this is his contract year. He wants to be a first-round draft pick, And Michigan State has had a second-round draft pick this year. I think Michigan State can show to him, demonstrate to him, you stay here, you can do what Jaden Reed did, but even better. You do what Jalen Naylor did, but even better. And Jalen was injured as a senior, or his fourth year. So that's going to be Michigan State's pitch. And I think Keon, Coleman, and Tucker have good communication, good relationship. Tucker's a guy, I mean, he's a business guy. He can sit down and just talk, no BS. I understand what you're doing. I understand so you tell me, Keon, what's out there for you? What are you hearing? What's being offered to you? You let me know that. We'll see if we can match, and we'll see if we can keep you. That's probably what Tucker's saying, among other things. So we'll see. Marlon Milano says, give him the money. George Page says, hey, Comp. By the way, George Page, great to have him here. George, you know what I'm going to say, but it's great to have George Page here. Former guitar player and keyboard player for Surrender Dorothy, one of the top 25 bands in East Lansing history. It's great to have George Page here. George Page says, hey, Comp, have you had a chance to see the new renovations at the Tom Izzo football building? Do they have a SpartanMag office? Not yet. I've not been able to lease one out over there yet. That'd be pretty expensive, but very funny. No, but I saw Darian Harris posted some pictures today about the progress over there. I've driven by there a couple times, but I haven't stopped to look and notice. So I'm going to have to go do that. Sparty 13th says hi from St. John's, Michigan. I was in St. John's to get some gas a couple days ago. Had a game up in Beale City. Good baseball up there. Beale City is so good at sports for a little town. They got their crap together pretty good out there. St. John's, home of what's called Uncle John's Cider Mill, just outside of St. John's. Home of Chris Patterson, one of the best all-time late model dirt track racers in the state of Michigan history. Bill Husion says, I've heard some people say that NIL is not Mel's responsibility to grow or maintain, but how isn't it? It's clearly a huge factor for some of our players. Well, because to grow name, image, and likeness, money and coffers, that's fundraising, and coaches have something to do with that, but that needs to be someone else out there getting it done. You might remember 2 years ago, Ryan Day estimating that his roster at that time, that it was going to take about $13 million to retain that roster. And you may remember Nick Saban. Well, that statement that he made, Ryan Day, that statement was made at a booster meeting. And you may remember Nick Saban saying, talking about, the Texas A&M went out and bought a bunch of recruits. And that ended up being like a little bit of a mudslinging match between Saban and Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo Fisher called a press conference and accused Nick Saban of stealing and knowing where all the bodies were buried and all that stuff. And Nick Saban later on said, well, I shouldn't really mention Texas A&M by name. So Nick Saban kind of walked it back and apologized. But privately, I'm sure that Nick Saban probably broke some dishes and threw a tantrum about it. Nick Saban, very good coach, maybe the greatest college football coach of all time, but whiner, childish, probably the worst person I've ever met in my life. How many people have you met in your life? 10,000 people, 20,000 people, 30,000 people? Let's say I've met 30,000 people. The worst, Nick Saban. All right, so good coach, though. I don't blame him for leaving Michigan State at all. I understand why he was doing it, and he went to a college where the tail wags the dog, and then he went to another one where the tail wags the dog. That's what he needed to do. I don't blame him for that at all. Very good coach. I'm talking about him as a person outside of football. Anyway, or if he's in the stadium running an illegal extra point practice and somebody breaks their leg, but that goes back a long time. Anyway, and not caring about the guy that's got a broken leg. That's just one of a million stories. So when Nick Saban was making that comment about Jimbo Fisher and A&M buying players, what he was saying, he was talking to an alumni, a booster group, and his message was, if you want us to continue to have a roster better than these teams on our schedule, you better give us the money so we can compete financially with A&M. That's what that meant. So those are two coaches, Ryan Day and Nick Saban, that were passing the buck to the donors. So it's not the coach's responsibility. It wasn't Saban's responsibility to collect the money. It's not Ryan Day's responsibility to collect the money. It's not Mel Tucker's responsibility to collect the money. That needs to be done at the support level, the donor level, the booster level, to create and strengthen the coffers to be competitive in NIL. You asked, how is it not Mel's responsibility? I just detailed how it's not for those two schools, and hopefully that makes sense. Sparty 13th, first time here. It's great to have Sparty 13th here. Rosalind Russell saying, nice to hear an adult, unbiased view. That's what we shoot for, Rosalind. Thank you. I'm glad that you see it that way. We try to be credible. We've covered Michigan State sports at Spartan Magazine, SpartanMag.com, and our fledgling family-owned news organization I've been with since 1993 when we were a print publication called Spartan Magazine. Had a lot of fun doing that. Then this thing called the internet came around, created SpartanMag.com, and over the years, SpartanMag.com took over and the magazine kind of went away. And all along the same time, I mean, we cover Michigan State closely, and there's no question we cover these players and we get to know them at a young age sometimes. And you know, I'm happy to see Draymond Green doing well. I knew him when he was 16, seen him play at the Spies camp down in Fort Wayne and some of these other recruits when they were recruits. So when they do well, am I happy for them as people because I know them more than I know the Purdue players? Yes, I'm not going to lie. I'm happy when they beat some of these teams. Happy for them as people. So in that regard, am I biased? I guess so. But when it comes to things that are going right or wrong with Michigan State football, we hope that we've established over the years that we will level with the readers the way that we see it. That doesn't mean that I'm right. I've disagreed with my friend Mike Valeni on a lot of things, and a lot of times he turns out being right. I'm not really able to tell the future on what the best way to do things is, but we try to be credible. And it sounds like you may see us that way. We appreciate that. Matthew Latham, who used to handle our MUN hockey board over at SpartanMag.com. Now we have Hockey Talk on the Underground Bunker message board. Good to have Matt here. I had a question in the mailbag about hockey recruiting and what they've gotten out of the portal lately, but I've not been able to do the research on that. And I've got to tell you, I really, really like hockey, and I dabble in the old man league over at Suburban Ice, play a little bit, and I play down in the pond, and my kid was a player. I've watched a lot of hockey, but my frame of reference is not as such that I can watch a hockey recruit and tell you that guy's the next John Michael Lyles. I don't have that frame of reference. I can report and say what other people that do know more about it and how they feel about things. Or if they get someone out of a portal, and let's say they get someone from Brown and they beat out North Dakota to get him, that means something. But in terms of watching hockey film and analyzing it, I'm not your guy for that. I can report that somebody that they get a commitment from is on the USA 18 under national developmental team. That means something, and they're getting more of that than they've had in recent years. Or if somebody is on the NHL, central scouting draft rankings, that means something. But I'm not going to be showing up at the Five Nations Cup and watching 16-year-olds and giving you any kind of tangible breakdowns on those guys. I apologize. Maybe someday I'll arrive at that level of frame of reference, but I've got to spend more time on basketball and football right now. And basketball is changing all the time, man. I used to be able to look at basketball recruits and have a better picture of what they're going to become. Now there's talent, and I'd say more talented players, and with positionless basketball and three-point line and short shot clock and just the way everything is played outside in, it's just more and more random, and it's hard to keep up. It's hard for this old man to keep up, but I'm trying. Dane McBain, I like that name, Dane McBain. Batting fourth for the Dodgers, Dane McBain. Too bad I don't have a good voice. The only thing it shows is that Thorne does not want to be a backup quarterback. Dane just coming strong with it. The Untitled Beer Ranking Show, that's Kelly Spartan. Great to hear from him. Says, welcome back, Comp. So, Untitled Beer Ranking Show is Kelly Spartan, and I didn't know that he had made that contribution when he was on the air with us. So, I wish I would have known that. I would have said thank you. But I didn't know it at the time. So I'll just do this. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Untitled Beer Ranking Show. And go check out his podcast if you get a chance. He, I don't know if they still do it, but during COVID, he and his grandfather would, he would go buy a brand of beer that they'd never tried before, and they would both sample it and give their comments, and I thought it was pretty good. Jake Z says, later Thorne, he says, if you're unwilling to fight for your position, we have young quarterbacks that will. No love lost. Well, that's not very nice from Jake Z. I'd expect Jake Z to be a little bit more understanding and supportive. but he's got the right to his opinion. Zach Everett. These are some cool names. You got Zach Everett, Jake Z, Dane McBain. These are good people. Zach Everett says, even with Brantley coming back, our secondary is looking thin. Who are some young guys that need to step up? And is there any guys who could get in the spring transfer window? We talked a moment ago with Malcolm Jones Sr. about Armarion Smith transferring in from Cincinnati. So, but you're right. The defensive backfield's thin. They're going to be relying on true sophomores. We talked about that earlier in the show. Dylan Tatum, he started against Penn State and survived. They went after him a little bit. I thought he's pretty good. You know, he's a thicker guy, but he's got quick feet. He's not like a consummate corner build. But if you got feet and you can make it work, and then you have that build, I don't know. Maybe he can be maybe, excuse my language, but a badass at corner. I don't swear very often. I think it's, as a tangent and a side note, I think there's too much swearing on podcasts and on Sirius XM. I think it sounds juvenile. I don't like it. Now, way back when we were first starting our podcast, me and Konendijk, I might have dropped some foul language here and there. That's when we were like one of the first Michigan State podcasts. And we were younger and a little crankier back then. But as our audience grew, and then we get in front of the camera like this, and then I hear other people do it. Like when my kids were younger, I'd have a podcast on and someone would start swearing. I might have to turn it off. I know the kids hear that in recess too, but I'm not going to act like that's good or proper, in my opinion. Maybe it is for you. I don't know. I'm not saying I don't use colorful language when the microphone's off. I just think that, and I hear podcasts like the Sports Illustrated Media podcast or like New York Times podcast, and those reputable, formerly reputable, well, maybe you don't think they're reputable. We'll leave that aside. But traditional, historic publications, and they got some Yahoo on there dropping F-bombs on podcasts from these historic brands. And I'm like, dude, juvenile, scuzzy, repulsive. But I'll use the word badass to describe Dylan Tatum. If he can, like, at his build, if he's got the feet and the hips to play corner at his build, that's uncommon. And he's the type of guy that if he sticks there and does well, that's another, like, you know, as you go along and you do this for a number of years and you see somebody do something, that's another thing that adds to the frame of reference that makes you say, okay, well, I remember 10 years ago Dylan Tatum did it. Just because the guy looks like that doesn't mean that he can't play corner. This is a frame of reference guy for me, Tatum. So Tatum, Brantley at corner, Lowry, those three can be pretty good. And keep an eye on Caleb Coley. He's got a chance to be real good, hearing good things about him. But we talked about that earlier. Jaden Mangum, Malik Spencer, they're on the linebacker level at safety. He's a cruiser. He's a cruise missile down there. Keep it healthy. Those guys are going to learn as they go. They'll make mistakes. You got to make sure they're on the same page. And if they're not on the same page this year, I'm not going to blame the players if it happens again, if it keeps happening. Hey, no question, Hazelton's good on the chalkboard, NFL pedigree, he's done some good things, Kansas State and everything, but at some point, do you have too much volume in? And guys, it's just, if it's not, we'll have to wait and see. And he knows it. He's got to prove it. So, good man, but it's got young players out there, and we'll see what happens. Is that fair? All right, so what do we have here? He says, are there any young guys that could get in the spring transfer window? Are there any guys that we could get in the spring transfer window? It's a good question. I'm sure there's some people out there. I talked about Armarion Smith coming in from Cincinnati. You know, you hear about things, Michigan State's looking at some wide receivers in the transfer window, but in terms of who they're looking at, sometimes it's hard to find out. And I'm not one that's going to look through the entire transfer portal and go through everybody's film and say, yeah, there's that corner from Utah State they should look at. I don't have time to do that. I've got to, in our coverage, I've got to be more reactionary, see who they're going after, and then look at film to tell you what I think. And I told you about, the guy, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you every guy's great. Some people will. Like, remember when Martavius, what was his name? Cravaris Crouch? Because he was 4-star and built real strong, that he was going to be like the best. Or Harold Joyner. Remember the people just being crazy, excited about Harold Joyner coming in? I like Harold Joyner. Good kid, good athlete. It seems like he should fit in somewhere. But just because someone's a 4-star coming in from Auburn or Tennessee doesn't mean they're going to be great coming in, and the guys coming in from Florida State and Liberty. I looked at them. They look all right. They could maybe help. But I just think they're guys. Armarian Smith, I've not looked at enough film. I think he's a guy that can help. I didn't know Kenneth Walker was going to be Kenneth Walker, that's for sure. So I missed on that one. I think everybody did, except Tucker and Will Piegler. They got that one right. So, I mean, some of those transfer portal guys, a higher percentage of them need to hit because Michigan State's still relying heavily on that portal. All right, so Rosalind Russell says, if this quarterback competition became known in December, do you think Coleman may have told Tucker his displeasure with Thorne and made that his reason for leaving? Good question. No. Ed Heidemann says, tulips are blooming in Holland. Sparty will be here for the tulip time. It's Tulip Festival in Holland, right? Is that in May? That's when the tulips bloom, right? Need a SpartanMag float with Jim waving to the crowd. Ed Heidema, I like your enthusiasm, like your style. I like Holland. I've been out to Holland a few times for a few things. I had a family member that marched in the Tulip Festival parade in Holland years ago. I was there as a youngster. Was there been there for a couple hockey tournaments. I like Holland, Michigan. Located on Michigan State's west coast. Beautiful over there. SpartanMag float. Ed, if you put together a SpartanMag float, I will show up and I'll wear a top hat and I will wave and I'll ride the float. And I'll bring a crunchy burger. How's that? Is that fair? Good post. Appreciate it. Gerald Wasserman says, Comp. Hold on a second here. Comp had he says Comp had concerns with Strayhorn's comments on size of Michigan State name, image, and likeness versus others. His kid at IMG leads me to believe he is in the know. Do you think we can compete going forward if that is true? Yes, you're exactly right. His son, what's Jason's son's name? Caden Thornhill? I should know it. He's a big-time offensive line recruit. Watched him at camp 2 summers ago. I remember Jason having video of him when his son was 13 or 12 or 13 years old, hitting a home run in baseball and kept his hands inside. I mean, he was like Cecil Fielder. He didn't play. He ended up quitting baseball, but he had a swing and some power. But you're right. With him being at IMG, he's aware of what's going on in the NIL game, and he was really well versed in Michigan's NIL game because Michigan's recruited him a little bit. Strayhorn's son. So yes, Strayhorn knows more about NIL than I do about the exact money figures that are out there. You ask, do I think Michigan State can compete going forward if that's true? In some ways, but you know, when NIL and legalized money can and stuff became legal, I didn't think Michigan State would be able to compete with some schools just because of vast numbers that some schools have and football being more important at other schools than it is at Michigan State. It's important at Michigan State, but it's an obsession at Michigan, right? And they've got some deep-pocketed boosters. So it doesn't surprise me that when all this stuff became legalized, and to Michigan's credit, for the most part over the years, they've made efforts to be clean. They've wanted to be clean. Schembechler always wanted to have a clean program and all that stuff. And he spoke negatively against those that cheat and everything. I respect that. They tried to be clean and everything. I'm sure they were cleaner than most for many years. And when cheating became more and more commonplace, I kind of felt Michigan was a little bit slow and hesitant to do that. Then when it became legal, I was like, I told people, I'm like, Michigan is going to be one that this can bring them back up to that national championship contention level when paying players became legal because they've got funds and they will mobilize them for football and they'll do it efficiently and effectively. And it sounds like that's what they're doing. And they're doing it now to pay the players they have. I think that's what Strayhorn is alluding to. I'm not sure that Michigan is going out on the front end and really attracting players with money. Maybe they are. They're recruiting pretty well this year. It seemed like they'd been a little hesitant to do that, and maybe pay the players that they have to keep them. So I don't know, but yeah, Strayhorn would know. Do I think Michigan State can compete going forward? To an extent, but I don't think Michigan State's ever going to have the highest paid NIL package in the country, if that's what you're asking. And if you don't have that, there will be times when teams outspend you. So you have to decide how wise you're going to be with your money. That's what this is going to come down to. Spunky181 says, man, just got here. What did I miss? Well, in the first hour, I explained how they built Stonehenge. You missed it, but you can go back and listen to that later. Gerald Wasserman says, Comp Strayhorn mentions comments on the size of MSU NIL very concerning with this kid. Is this like, I think the same guy posted that same thing twice. Internet Cold the Cowboy posted, says, I'm 39 and play college football. I disagree with your comments on the 6-7 yards off comment. It is not normal to play your DBs as far off as Michigan State did last year. There were no adjustments all season. Really? Well, I mean, Michigan State plays a lot of cover 3. That goes back to the Seattle Legion and Boom stuff. Press man-to-man. Did you want Amir Speed playing press man-to-man? Is that what you wanted? Is that the adjustment you wanted? The dude had no agility. He has good straight line speed. If that's the adjustment that you want, is more press man-to-man with guys that can't play press man-to-man, then at 39 years old, you're right. Mark Jacobs says, roll Spartans, let's go. Spunky181 says, right, sometimes they weren't even on the TV screen. Yeah, when you play cover 3, the corners are going to roll. You play deep cover 4, they'll roll back. They played a little bit of, press quarters here and there. But I'd have to go back, I have to go back and watch it again, but I watched it a lot. Presumably you did too. They were playing coverages like a lot of teams play. Now they're not up playing press like the very best do or can, because they didn't really have people to do that. Now against Minnesota, Michigan State was terrible. I'll give you that. Against Minnesota, Michigan State was god awful. And they played the same loose coverage all day, and they had a terrible week of practice coming back from Washington, and they had all those injuries. And I said after that game, that was, I thought Minnesota was going to win comfortably, and it ended up being worse than I thought. But then, Michigan State became better in some areas depending on who was available to them. And if you're saying they never made adjustments, did you watch the damn Illinois game? Now I know Illinois is not a passing team. But that what they had to do with the defensive personnel was nothing but adjustments. You're talking about pass defense, okay. But these blanket statements, if you're talking about the Minnesota game, and that might have affected your mental construct on the entire season, that one game. But as the season went along, there were changes, and they tried different things. But, yeah, some of it involved off coverage with zone. But it's not like it was like off man-to-man like all the time. There was some press coverage in there. And do I have to go out and prove the sky's blue? That'd be pretty easy to do. Going out and bringing in some video of some other games. I might just go watch, because usually when I counterpoint something like this, usually I want to have 100% facts to back it up. And I've got, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, when's the last time I looked at film? What were they doing? I'm trying to think of players and plays. And my memory's not as good as it used to be. But I do think that when I watched Michigan State and everything that was going wrong, I didn't think it's because they had guys too far off of a receiver. If someone was off a receiver, it's because the guy couldn't cover his ass. It wasn't getting beat on the chalkboard. But they got to make sure that they don't have their own guys with so many signals and so much volume in that they end up not knowing what to do, and people are not on the same page. That needs to come first. All right, let's see. Explain cover 3 to me. You can't stop. You are overstepping your knowledge. Cover 3 is a corner, and it's 2 corners and a safety, 3 deep across, 3 deep, and a safety comes into linebacker level. It's cover 3. You have 3 deep lanes, and this corner has It's zone, and he doesn't want anyone to get behind him all the way to the goal line. Same with the deep middle safety. Same with the deep corner over here. It's cover 3. Internet called the cowboy. I'm out. Love Spartans. Hate your take on them, and I'm not into uneducated, controversial takes that are designed to get an emotional reaction. So he's out. So he didn't get to. So he tested me on something. I'm not. I mean, yeah. Come back during the season, and we'll help you with some things. But he's 39 and he played football. I'm sure he could teach me a few things, and I would look forward to that. But cover 3. All right. Spunky 181, I don't count Mel's first year or year and a half. Go Green 03 says fans underestimate the Nasser fallout. I think that had a lot to do with the drop off at the end of the D'Antonio era that obviously still affects Tucker. Debatable. Dane McBain says Mark Dethorne's resume looks pretty good. Mark Dethorne is the new Michigan State Director of Player Personnel, hired a couple days ago. Was Director of Player Personnel, basically a recruiting coordinator at Pittsburgh. He left Pittsburgh to go to Virginia Tech. And then, and that was interesting that he would leave Pittsburgh to go to Virginia Tech. Did Virginia Tech pay more? Presumably. Pittsburgh maybe has a reputation of not paying enough. I don't know. But goes to Virginia Tech when Fuente was hired, had a coaching change there. Head coach was fired, and Dethorne was not retained by Brent Pry's staff when Pry came in from Penn State. Penn State, you look at Virginia Tech, they split up recruiting coordinator duties. They've got an offensive recruiting coordinator and a defensive recruiting coordinator. And both of those two people are position coaches, which is interesting. I've not seen it done that way. And then there are other staff members, support members involved with recruiting, but they didn't have necessarily a kingpin recruiting coordinator guy. So they didn't retain Dethorne. He didn't coach last year, so he was available, applied for the job, interviews. I know there were a lot of other people that were interested. I'm sure there were. And they filled the void with him. So I agree. His resume looks pretty good. All right. A lot of talk here about the Nassar stuff. All right. Looks like we've had just about enough. I've heard other voices in Spartan media who are convinced Hauser is the implied quarterback one with Thorne gone rather than Kim. No, Hauser's got some potential. He's doing pretty good, but he is not above Kim. I mean, midway through next season, is it possible? Possibly. But in the spring, no. Kim was getting more reps with the 1s and 2s than Hauser was, and Kim's been better than Hauser. I know someone said that Hauser graded out better in the first scrimmage. That's because Hauser was playing against the third string that day. MSU fan number 1 says, is our baseball, nothing against Hauser, I'm just telling you what's going on. MSU fan number 1, is our baseball team going to the Big Ten tournament as well as our softball crew? I think they are. I think Michigan State baseball is. So this weekend, I don't remember who they're playing this weekend. Is this weekend they play Iowa? Michigan State needs to keep rolling. You know, historically, when they've gotten to this level, they've kind of not been able to maintain. They've been a surprise so far this year. Can they keep it going? We'll have to wait and see. I went to the Michigan State game at Michigan a week ago Friday. I hadn't been down to Ray Fisher Stadium in a long time. And I used to like Ray Fisher Stadium. It used to have a complete covered grandstand with a grass field. Now it's turf. They took down some of the covered grandstand. But it's like it's crammed in there. It's very plastic. It's plastic grass. It's plastic and cement. And on the outfield, it's plastic and cement. And you got like the, whatever that building is out in right field, is that indoor track or something, but it's a big tin roof. And then, you know, the softball field's way over there, and the football stadium is, it's just concrete and plastic. And plastic and concrete. Plastic. And you go out, and the people are friendly. And the food was pretty good. And they got that, whatever that running, is that where the track team practices? Or is that like a public track? They got like that track there with the grass infield that's just vacant. I don't want to say vacant grass. It's just plastic and cement and some bricks and just railroad tracks and industrial and just. Michigan won that game. Michigan State won one game that weekend, but Michigan took 2 of 3. But just go to Michigan State. I know they had a flood problem, but the Michigan State baseball team's been off and on. And Michigan's baseball team was really good a few years ago, but at Michigan State, you got that grass, and it's beautiful grass. But the everything's been so 45 degrees around here. Things have stopped blooming a little bit. But this time of year, if you get sunshine at McLean Stadium, the grass, the best baseball grass in the country, and the river and the trees when you're walking in the green space, the grass and those old sycamore, the trees, just park-like atmosphere, just pristine at Michigan State baseball. Compared to Michigan, it's just plastic and cement. Nothing against Tracy Smith, good coach. I loved him at Indiana, loved him at Arizona, good man. Not the best setting for baseball. They got some decent baseball fans at Michigan, though. I give them that. I mean, they got, by Big Ten standards, pretty good. How was Nate Ote injury? Looked bad in the spring game. I've not heard. Good question. All right. I think that's about it. I think we're going to wrap it up. Spartan MD says, I don't feel tardy. Quoting David Lee Roth. Spartan MD says, Jim, give me some positive news on special teams if you can. The punting situation was not on TV for the Big Ten Network, but the guy, the Florida, what's the guy's name? Telke? I should know this. How do I not have this known? I don't have his name. Some of you may. My guy Conan Dyke was really impressed with the punting at the spring scrimmage. On the low key, I think the punting might have been pretty good. You've got Michael O'Shaughnessy transferring in from Ohio State. He was okay at Ohio State as a backup. But the walk-on, I forget his name. I've not seen him punt yet. But I hear that looks pretty good. Hank Pepper's still around as this long snapper. I don't know if he snapped that day. He has some ailments, and they're still working on that. Kicking situation, Jonathan Kim's not there yet. We won't know more about him until he arrives. So there's that. Punt return, you don't have Jaden Reed anymore. I don't know who the punt returner is. Might be Terrell Henry. I'm not sure. So I'll have to wait and see. Anyway, I appreciate everybody for playing along and all the comments and all the tests and all the aggravation and people posting me up and taking me to task. We always welcome that. And we appreciate all the people coming in to talk some football, talk Michigan State sports on a Tuesday night. It's been going for 3 hours and 40 minutes when you count the Sparta podcast. It's good to be over there. Appreciate everybody here giving us likes and subscribing to the channel. Had a big crowd tonight. We're certainly thankful for that. People want to talk Michigan State football here in the month of May. We'll be coming out on a more regular basis after, we'll try another one here in the month of May, a couple of them. And then after about June 3rd, when I'm no longer a baseball dad, we might be getting these a little bit more frequently. We look forward to that. We want to get more and more listeners and subscribers and more of a following. That certainly helps the bottom line over at SpartanMag.com. Again, thanks for everybody, all your posts and your questions, and thanks for checking us out. We'll see you the next time. Go over to SpartanMag.com, but become a subscriber over there. We would appreciate it. Thanks a lot, everybody. Take care. Take care.